I'm going to spend 100 days taming every creature on Ark Ragnarok. On the map, there are 114 total creatures and I will be taming them all solo. This is going to be my hardest challenge yet because there are more creatures than total days. To spice up this challenge, I've made some rules. Number 1, I have to tame creatures in the order their saddles unlock. Number 2, if a creature doesn't have a saddle, I can tame them at any time. And finally, number 3, at the end of the 100 days, I have to fight Nunatak with my best 20 creatures, and within those 20, no duplicates are allowed. Will I be able to complete these challenges? Stick around until day 100 to find out. I decided to spawn in Viking Bay to begin my adventure, and I was immediately rewarded with my ears bleeding. Oh my gosh, my eardrums. After recovering, I surveyed my surroundings and I was amazed at how good this map looked. It didn't distract me for long though, and I got straight to work harvesting bushes, punching trees, and picking up rocks. With these resources, I made a pickaxe as well as some basic cloth armor. Now that I was slightly geared up, I was ready to find my first tame of the challenge, and when I saw a Dilo with a baby, I knew it was meant to be. I went to battle with the mother and juked out her spit like a pro. With her trump card gone, it was an easy fight and I claimed victory. I am gonna claim this Dilo and count it as our first tame, but normally I won't claim these guys just because it makes challenge too easy. I now had my first tame of the challenge, and for whatever reason, I decided to name her Lisa. With that done, I made a stone hatchet and harvested the dead Dilos so I could feed Lisa. I continued deeper into Viking Bay and I spotted a Listro, which I wanted to be my first legitimate tame of the challenge. So I put berries into my hotbar, then fed it once. I was following it around when a Pegomastax stole its thunder and yoinked berries out of my hotbar, which tamed it immediately. I wasn't complaining though, and I was stoked to have my first real tame out of the way. I named him Patrick the Pego, and when I spotted a dodo in the corner of my eye, I knew I had to tame it too. So I put my dukes up and taught the poor dodo a lesson. Once she was down, I gave her berries, which tamed her immediately, and I gave her the boring name of Diane. I then went back to the Listro to finish the job, and once he was tamed, there was only one name I could give him. I had no other choice but to name him Happy Feet like all the other Listros in my past 100 days. Oh, I love you, buddy. I love you. Now I had 4 tames under my belt and I was extremely pumped at my progress. For the remainder of the day, I wanted to set up a starter base and craft some gear. So I harvested a rock and I chopped down a couple trees to get a stockpile of materials. I then made a thatch foundation, a water skin, and tried to finish my cloth armor but couldn't. I thought I was short on hides, so I slaughtered a poor dodo only to find out I needed fiber. After I got some, I finished crafting my cloth armor and I could set up my base. I placed my foundation, then crafted a mortar and pestle as well as a campfire and spear. I placed those crafting stations down, and next I wanted to make myself a bed as well as a storage box. I went out to get the necessary hide, and when I spotted a Moschops, it was perfect. I chased my prey down and managed to kill it. After harvesting it, I had plenty of hide and I was on my way home when tragedy struck. No, oh, no, 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 no. Diane, no, fight hard guys, fight hard. No, my boys are gonna die. Diane died to a Dilo and I ran home in a panic to save the rest of my tames. Luckily, I was able to make it back to base to save them, but I shed a tear from my poor dodo, which was the first casualty of the challenge. Once I refocused, I made the bed as well as a storage box, and while I was in my inventory, I realized I could craft even more gear. So I made a bow, bolas, and a couple arrows, which would really help me to protect myself. After placing down my bed and storage box, day 1 ended as an extremely successful day. To begin day 2, I needed to farm a couple levels so I could learn the Trank Arrow engram. This engram would be essential to getting the first saddle tame, which is the Phiomia. To do this, I pet Happy Feet to boost the amount of experience I gained, then I went out to harvest some wood. This was so I could make wood foundations, which would give me a ton of XP. After making 2 of them, I replaced the floor on my base and leveled up to level 21. This allowed me to learn the engrams for metal tools, smithy, and Trank Arrow. My next order of business was to make narcotics, and to do so, I needed spoiled meat and narcoberries. So I split all my meat stacks so they would spoil faster and began picking bushes like a madman. I only got a few berries per bush, but after a while I had enough that I was satisfied. While walking back to base, I saw a couple pteranodons and it reminded me why this challenge was so difficult. Man, I wish I could tame one of these pteranodons. Like literally, if I was not doing this challenge, I could literally bola this guy and have him knocked out and have a saddle for him like probably in the next day. Getting back on track, all my meat spoiled and I was able to make a bunch of narcotics. Once they were finished crafting, I built 14 trank arrows and set out on my very first taming mission to tame a Phiomia. I ran towards the back of Viking Bay where they can spawn, and I mentally prepared myself for any dangers I might face. On my journey, I found a couple rare flowers, which was an awesome find, and they would be very useful in upcoming tames. After making it in the jungle above the bay, I immediately encountered a super high level Dilo that put up a serious fight. I broke both my spears fighting it, and I was gravely injured by the time it finally went down. I was starting to fear that the area was too dangerous and I wouldn't be able to find one when I finally spotted a Phiomia. I ran towards it and I noticed a running Parasaur, which should have warned me that something was wrong, but I completely ignored it. I bullied the Phiomia and I started pumping it with arrows when I saw a pack of sabers run past me. This made me extremely nervous, but I was still hopeful I could tame it when I got it knocked out. My hope didn't last for long though, because the sabers came back and devoured the poor pig. I booked it into the jungle and I was praying that the sabers wouldn't chase me down. My prayers were not answered and I was soon in some serious trouble. The saber had tracked me down and I defended myself by hitting it with a bola. I then ran for my life into the jungle, only to find myself face to face with another threat. Oh, I'm in some serious trouble. I'm in some serious trouble. Okay, I think I'm safe here. I somehow managed to escape and I was able to continue my search for another Phiomia. I was beyond ecstatic when I found one and it was in a super safe spot. I wasted no time bullying it and knocking it out with my remaining trank arrows. Once he was down, I fed him mejoberries and in no time he was tamed. This time my creative genius struck and I decided to give him the fitting name of Dadbod. Now I had my first saddle tame of the challenge and I just needed to make it home. I worked my way down the dangerous cliffs and I almost died of fall damage. In the future I had to be extremely careful, so I came up with a plan to get away if anything attacked me. And this is some dangerous territory, especially for Dadbod here, who I'm definitely leaving as my sacrifice if anything chases me. Once I was at the bottom, I saw a raptor and I made a mad dash to get past him. As expected, the raptor attacked and I bullied him to try to save Dadbod. Let's go, run for your life because it's on the line. Run for your life. Dadbod! He's going so slow. Where is he going? Dadbod! Lock in, buddy. You're about to die. Luckily, Dadbod and I were able to escape and I took a second to clean the dookie out of my pants. It had been an unbelievably stressful day, but I had successfully tamed a Phiomia and made it back to base safely as day 2 ended. On day 3, my goal was to get the next saddle tame, which was the Parasaur. To do this, I needed more trank arrows and I wanted to craft a Parasaur saddle. I already had what I needed to craft it, so I built it and I made a couple additional bolas to help me in the tame. Next, I went on a harvesting frenzy picking bushes, which allowed me to craft a bunch more narcotics. I wanted to make more though, so I went out for a second harvesting wave, and while I was out, I spotted a level 50 turtle. This was the next saddle tame after the Parasaur, and if things went well today, my goal was to tame it as well. I grinded a couple more narcotics and I made the tranks I needed. Now I was ready to go and I set out on my adventure to find a Parasaur. I had seen a bunch of them when I first spawned in, so I ran in that direction and I was having zero luck. This was classic Ark luck. The second you are looking for something, it is nowhere to be found. After some more complaining in my head, I finally saw one, but it was getting attacked by a Dilo. I quickly ran down to help it, only to find myself face to face with a max level Dilo. Once both my spears broke, I decided the fight was way above my pay grade. Okay, I'm out of here. The Parasaur escaped and I'm escaping. Is that a Jerboa? I guess there's Jerboas here too. Maybe I'll get one of those guys. The first Parasaur I spotted was gone, but I managed to find 2 more in a different area. The first one was a level 60 and the second was a level 85. That was a very decent level, so I decided he was the one. I bullied him and put arrow after arrow right into his dome. Eventually, he crashed to the ground and I put berries in his inventory to tame him. After waiting for a while, he was tamed and I named him Peter the Parasaur. I then put the saddle on him and rode him towards my base. As I was running, I also harvested a bunch of bushes with Peter so I could grind more narcotics once I was back. I was almost home when I spotted a Jerboa and I decided I wanted him. I taught the poor little furball a lesson and knocked him out cold. Once he was tamed, I named him Jeffrey and I finished my journey back to base. Once I was back, I crafted a whopping 71 narcotics. With plenty of narcos, I needed to make some more arrows, so I harvested some flint. I then made a bunch of arrows and turned them all into tranks. Now I was ready to knock out the turtle, and it was going to be a breeze while riding Peter. I was miles faster than the poor turtle, and I sat back in comfort as I pumped it with arrows. Before long, she started running and took a tumble on the sandy beach. I then gave her some food, and while I was waiting for her to tame, I unfortunately discovered the next tame was the Morellatops. That's rough. That's rough, man. Because that's all the way across the map from me. This would be an extreme challenge, and tomorrow I would have to come up with a plan to succeed. After some waiting, the turtle tamed, knocking another tame off the list. I named her Little Chunker, and this marked the end of day 3. As day 4 began, my goal was clear. I needed to travel across the entire map, and I wanted to bring my tames with me. Going over the steep terrain of Ragnarok would have been a death sentence, so my only option was to build a boat. It would allow me to have a mobile base, and I would be able to bring all of my dinos with me. Luckily, I had everything I needed for the raft except for wood, so I took Peter out with me to the forest and began chopping. I used Peter's high weight to help me carry the super heavy wood, and in no time I had enough. I crafted the raft and I placed it down into the water. Now that I had a structure to build on, I came up with a design that would best fit my needs. I made a bunch of foundations so I could cover the entirety of the raft, and I picked up all my structures on my original shabby starter base. Next, I methodically covered the entire raft with foundations so I could utilize the most amount of space. I also left one gap in the center so I could easily drive my boat without jumping off. The next phase of my design was to extend the raft edges with as many ceilings as possible. This would give me the space I would need to transport my tames, and I would still have room for crafting stations. I then ran out of wood, so I went on a second chopping frenzy. I needed enough wood to make ceilings, ramps, and a bunch of quarter walls that would keep everyone in place. Once I was done harvesting, I crafted the ramps as well as a bunch more ceilings. I got to work placing everything down, and in no time my raft was starting to come together. Yeah. This is looking pretty nice. It's just going to be a nice little platform for us to do really anything we want on. I finished placing the last ramp and the last ceiling I needed to make my boat symmetrical. I then somehow struggled to find the engram for wood railing when it is literally called wood railing. There should be... Oh, railing. There we go. That's crazy, Cappy. Maybe the thing called railing is what you want to craft. After my last 2 brain cells were finally firing again, I fenced off my entire boat, which would add protection to my base and keep my tames from falling off. Now my boat was complete, and I only needed to focus on placing down my crafting stations. Once I was done, there was only one thing I needed to do before I was ready to set out. I desperately needed to harvest metal so I could build myself much better gear. Without it, I would have no hope of being successful in future tames, so I ran down the beach with Peter to his secret metal spot. The waterfall inside the bay hides a massive cave that is packed to the brim with metal rocks. I harvested as much as possible, and even though my stone pickaxe took ages to break the rocks, I managed to get a decent supply. I then set off back home to build some refining forges that would be essential to smelting the metal. I needed hide for the forges, so I killed several creatures, including a delusional moss chops that was asking for giant bee honey as a taming food. Yeah, giant bee honey. Who do you think I am, buddy? I am dirt poor as far as this world goes so far. 2 dimes to rub together. You think I have giant bee honey? Once that was done, I made 2 refining forges and a second mortar and pestle. I then moved all my tames onto my new base and placed down my crafting stations. Day 4 came to a close as I lit my forges and started smelting the metal. When days 5 through 6 began, I was ready to begin my long journey across the map. I set sail and I was ready to hold the W key for 30 minutes. My adventure would most likely be a peaceful one, and the only thing that could ruin my day would be a giant whale. If one attacked me, I would be in serious trouble, so I made sure to stay as close to the coast as possible where they were unlikely to be. I continued my journey, and a heavy fog set in that made it extremely difficult to see anything, but I managed to make it past the dangerous swamp biome without any issues. Going on our adventure to see the Wizard of Oz. Hopefully there's not a guy that destroys my entire boat. After an extremely long boat ride that took the entirety of day 5, the desert islands were in sight, which is where the Morellatops could spawn. I worked my way into the grouping of islands and sailed up the river, keeping my eyes peeled for any Morellos. I was having no luck at first and only saw Parasaurs and some Raptors. Finally, I spotted my first Morellatops, but it was surrounded by Raptors, so I kept looking until I found a different group that would be easier to tame. Now that I had a target in mind, I needed to prepare myself with metal gear. I made a pit stop with my boat to get some wood and stone so I could build myself a smithy. It didn't take me long to get what I needed, and I crafted, then placed the smithy. First order of business, I made myself a metal hatchet and pickaxe. Next, I learned the engram for crossbow, which would significantly help to knock out creatures. I also had a bunch of levels I hadn't pumped yet, and after leveling up, I was able to learn flak armor. I then got to crafting, and I made myself a crossbow, and I had the exact perfect amount of metal to make myself a full set of flak. We are looking good, and our metal drip. This was a huge advancement to already have done on day 4, and I knew I was definitely ready to tame a Morellatops. After parking my boat, I scouted their levels, and one was a level 20 while the other was a level 145. I decided to tame the low level because I didn't prepare enough tranks for such a high level. My strategy for this tame was to run around like a maniac and dodge their super slow attacks while shooting arrows. I began the tranking process, and as expected, they immediately tried to trample me. Little did they know I was an Ark veteran and I was way too squirrely to get hit. I continued to pump the Morello with arrows and chase it down when it ran away. Before long, the beast crashed to the ground and I just had to run around until its buddy calmed down. Once I was safe, I went back to my boat to get mejo berries, and I spotted a dolphin that was swimming in the water. This was actually the very next saddle tame, and if I could get it after the Morello was tamed, it would be perfect. So I quickly got some berries with Peter and tamed up Max the Morellatops. Now I was able to tame the dolphin, and I wasted no time passively feeding it. I got 1 feet off before it bolted into the depths, and I realized it was not safe in the slightest when I saw several Megalodons. I cowered on my boat and waited until I got another opportunity to feed it. I got another feeding, and I knew I was going to get this tame done. But I was not confident in my ability to protect it in the water after it was tamed. Before long, I got the dolphin tamed and named her Speedboat. As expected, she immediately got attacked by sharks, and I had no other choice but to hope she could outrun them. So to end these days, I started sailing back to the mainland where I would be able to find the next saddle tame. On day 7, I had to tame Apaches, so I continued sailing away from the desert because none could spawn there. I found a nice safe spot off the side of the mainland for my boat, and I unfortunately had to say goodbye to Speedboat. She was getting attacked by a swarm of mantas, and there was nothing I could do. After that tragedy of losing a second tame, I took Peter on an adventure to explore around and hopefully find Apache. I had to be very careful in this area because it had a ton of raptor packs that could ruin my day. I sneakily navigated through the landscape and avoided all the dangers in the area. After a long search, I finally lucked out and spotted one. She was a level 90, and I wasted no time hitting her with a bola, then starting to knock her out. She surprisingly had a large amount of torpor and broke free from the bola just to glitch out completely. Okay, looks like she has brainworms. After she was done randomly spinning in a circle, she was knocked out, and I gave her some berries to start taming her. Once she tamed, I knocked another saddle tame off the list, and I gave her a very fitting name. For the remainder of day 7, I wanted to make it back to my base and prepare for the next tame, which was the trike. On my journey back, I came up with a big plan for the future. On most maps, there are not any flyers that don't require a saddle, but on Ragnarok, there's the Griffin. This means I could tame it at any time, and while this would be an extremely difficult tame without already having a flyer, I was confident in my abilities. Once I had a Raptor, my goal was to tame one, and it would be essential to getting around such a massive map. I continued my journey home, and I got absolutely hounded by a bunch of pests. They're just stealing all my stuff. Leave me alone. Stop stealing my wallet. After that fiasco, I made it back, and I needed to farm a bunch of narcotics as well as a trike saddle. First, I needed to get meat to spoil, so I bulleted and slaughtered a poor seagull. I then went ham with Peter harvesting narco berries. Once everything was spoiled, I made a bunch of narcotics, and I just needed to get hides so I could make a trike saddle. Earlier, I had seen a stego down the beach that I wanted to kill, so I harvested some materials and made a bunch of arrows. I then used a group of rocks to shoot the stego and run away before it was able to hit me. I hit dome shot after dome shot, and before long the stego was badly hurt. I let Peter join the fight to help me finish it, and I got the hide I needed. This allowed me to craft the trike saddle, and day 7 ended. On day 8, my only goal was to tame a trike, and I decided to move my boat down the beach to see if I could find some. On my way down, I realized I desperately needed a spyglass since it was getting annoying to not be able to see levels until I was close up. So I drove to a crystal spot nearby, and I hiked my way up the steep mountain. As I was climbing, I made a major rookie mistake. Berries. Oh, I gotta get some more berries. Oh, I just ate 8 narcotics. I might be taking a nap here. Oh no. Luckily, I was in a safe spot and I was able to take a peaceful nap without getting attacked. Once I woke up from that newbie mistake, I felt refreshed and I was able to harvest a bunch of crystal as well as some obsidian. I took a leap of faith into the ocean, and once I made it back to my base, I made a spyglass as well as a pike. Now I was completely ready for the tame, so I drove to the beach until I spotted a cluster of trikes. The literal first trike I spotted was a level 130 and it was meant to be. All that was left to do was to convert my arrows to tranks and find a good rock to stand on. Once I found a decent outcropping, I sniped the trike and led it towards the rocks. It was the perfect height and the trike couldn't hit me at all. Unfortunately, the trike was smarter than I thought and found a way to climb up on the rock. Oh, he's up on the rock with me. Yeah, you can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man, baby. I was too fast for the trike to catch and I continued to land snipes with my crossbow. When it started running away, I chased it knowing it was about to go down. I was super distracted chasing it and its buddy landed a full charge on my cheeks. To say this scared me is an understatement and I ran around in a panic to avoid it. After I was decently safe, I finished the job and managed to knock out the high level trike. This was a huge W, and when tamed, this trike would be a great harvester and good muscle to protect my base. After giving the trike food and waiting for a long while, the trike tamed and I decided to name him Big Boy. I got my new tame to the boat and this marked the end of day 8. When day 9 began, I had only one thing in mind, and that was to tame a high-level raptor so I could get a griffin. I had plenty of tranks for this tame, but I needed to get some hide for its saddle. With my new beast of a tame, I took down a parasaur and a terrorbird, which gave me plenty. I then harvested the final resources, and I was able to craft the raptor saddle. Now, I just had to make the painfully slow journey through the terrain to find a good level. The very first pack I found seemed to only have horrible levels, and on top of that, they were getting slaughtered by a group of trikes. After a ton more running, I finally found a full pack of raptors, and the first 2 were lackluster, but the third was exactly what I was looking for. When they started attacking a turtle, I saw my opportunity to separate them and jump into combat. Once the turtle died, the 2 low levels began to attack my trike while the high level was attacking a different turtle. This could not have been more perfect, and it allowed me to kill the lower levels without damaging the one I wanted. Once they were dead, I thought I would trank the high level while it was fighting the turtle so I could get free progress on it. But I realized this might have been a big mistake when the raptor started getting super bloody. If I didn't jump in to help kill the turtle, it would most definitely die. I carefully circled the turtle and hit it with my trike while making sure not to damage the raptor. This continued for a while and I had a sinking feeling the raptor would die. The raptor was mere moments from death, but I clutched up and I was able to bola, then finish knocking out the raptor. All that was left to do was to protect it while it tamed from the numerous creatures around. I could not have done it without Big Boy, and I was extremely grateful I tamed such a high level. It was a very stressful tame, but I got it done and I named my new buddy Echo. To end day 9, I ran all the way home with my new tame. On day 10, I only had one thing in my mind, and that was to grind the necessary structures and materials for the Griffin tame. Now that I had a raptor, there was nothing holding me back anymore, and I was eager to take to the sky. To be successful in this tame, I needed a boatload of narcos, so I split a bunch of meat in my inventory. Next, I needed to make a trap which would consist entirely of stone gates. This would be a serious harvesting mission to get this done, so I had all my high carry weight dinos follow me. I then broke as many rocks as I possibly could and loaded up Big Boy's inventory. I also had to deforest a whole area of trees to get the wood I needed as well as thatch. After a long time harvesting, I wanted to see how much I could make, and I was able to make 3 out of the 4 gateways I needed. So I got back to harvesting, and while I was doing so, I thought about how excited I was to get a griffin. I love this map. Ragnarok's the best. Ragnarok's the best. Mainly because there's griffins on here, which is my absolute favorite dino. Hands down, our favorite creature in Ark. Once I was finally done, I crafted the last gateway I needed as well as the 2 gates to seal the trap. Now that my trap was complete, I wanted to make myself a bed just in case things went south. So I used Big Boy to harvest a bunch of berries and turn them all into narcotics. I then crafted a ton of extra arrows and repaired my crossbow. To end day 10, I painstakingly harvested raw metal from normal rocks until I had enough that I could craft myself a second crossbow. Days 11 through 12 were very exciting because it was time to tame a griffin. I had done a ton of prep, so I was completely ready for the tame and I set off on Echo. I needed to make it to the grass plains by the green obelisk where griffins spawn. This meant I had a lot of climbing to do, and it was a pain in the butt. It was really hard to make jumps, and Echo often slipped off rocks, which made me lose progress. But eventually, I made it past most of the climb, and I realized the area was super dangerous. I saw a level 130 Rex, a dire bear, and many more dangerous creatures I had to avoid. Luckily, even while weighed down, Echo was fast enough to avoid most creatures, and I finally made it to my destination. I immediately spotted one of the new giant bisons, which was a cool find, and I was really looking forward to that tame in the future. Not long after that, I spotted my first griffin, and as I got closer, I realized there was even more of them. Oh, there's two. There's one right here too. Oh, there's three. Level 45 and level 55. So they're all kind of sucky levels, so it looks like. None of these griffins were the monster level I was looking for, but they would be good backups if I didn't find a good one. Before I continued searching, I wanted to loot the yellow ring drop, but one of the griffins acted like he was protecting his prized possession. He would not fly more than 2 feet from the drop, and when he finally did, it immediately despawned. That really ticked me off, and I was 100% sure I could hear the griffin laughing at me as I ran away. Continuing on my original mission, I ran up higher into the grasslands, and I found some more dangerous threats. There was a whole group of aloes, and they were my direct counter because if they gave me the bleed effect, I wouldn't be able to outrun them. So I gave them a wide berth, and after a while, I finally spotted another griffin. Oh, let's go! Oh my gosh, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Oh my gosh. The griffin of my dreams was right in front of my eyes, and I knew I couldn't mess this up. If I got this tame, it would make my life a whole lot easier and make this challenge possible. I got right to work setting up a trap for it, and I only placed down a few gates when the aloes from earlier got way too close. I quickly picked everything up, and I would have to make the trap higher in the mountains where it would be safe. My strategy for this trap was to have 4 gateways form a box and the doors would seal it. Next, I wanted to methodically build the trap so it would have a gap that would barely be wide enough for my raptor to run through. But the gap would not be big enough that the griffin could escape, so it would work perfectly. After the trap was done, I placed down my backup bed, and it was time for the hardest part of the tame. I needed to lead the griffin into the trap and managed to keep my raptor alive at the same time. After a couple missed arrows on the griffin, I finally landed a shot and he was in hot pursuit. He was ripping Echo apart, and I needed to make my first attempt to trap him. Yeah, keep going, buddy. Keep going. Keep going, keep going. Okay, we're close. We're close. We're close. We're close. The griffin had swerved out at the last second, and I started to get nervous I wouldn't be able to trap him before I died. He did an absolute boatload of damage to me, and I only had a few attempts before I was dead. After failing a second attempt, I had my fingers crossed that the third time would be my lucky charm. Okay, we gotta turn around. Come on in here, buddy. Come on in here. He's in the trap. Close the gate. Yes, he's in! Oh, that's huge. My trap and strategy had worked perfectly, and I could not be more ecstatic because I knew this tame was in the bag. I converted a bunch of arrows into tranks, and now I just had to shoot him until he went down. I made sure to time my crossbow arrows perfectly because it takes about 4 seconds for a creature's torpor to rise all the way up after a hit. If you shoot it faster than this, you will waste arrows and deal too much damage to the creature. After shooting almost all of my arrows, he was still not down and he was looking very bloody. I was super worried he would die, but he finally crashed to the ground. He was super low on health, so now I just needed to protect him and get some prime meat to tame him. I ran down the hill, and when I spotted a low-level Argent, I knew it was the perfect source of prime. I played Ring Around the Rosie with it for a while until it finally croaked. It gave me all the prime I needed, and I ran up to finish my tame. He had perfect taming effectiveness, and after a couple feeds, he was mine. I named this monster of a Griffin Ragnar, and I took to the skies. It was a super stressful group of days, but I got the job done. I decided to leave Echo in the trap for now, and as I was flying home, I decided to get a drop. This ended up being a great decision because I got an improved scuba tank which would be beyond useful for underwater taming. I was over the moon, and this awesome group of days ended. On day 13, I wanted to make some cryopods. Now that I had a flyer, I could easily traverse the map, and if I wanted to transport tames with me, cryopods were an essential. Before I went to collect resources for cryopods, I saw some owls on my beach, and I figured I'd give Ragnar a test drive. I used his diving swipe attack to absolutely obliterate the aloes, and I was amazed at how powerful Ragnar was. With that distraction over, I looked at what I needed for a cryopod. In total, I needed metal, a little bit more crystal, polymer, and some oil. The first resource I went for was metal, so I flew to a nearby mountaintop and got to work. I harvested as much as possible, and I unfortunately had to dump out some metal because Ragnar's carry weight wasn't the best. I then flew home, loaded up the metal, and harvested some trees that allowed me to ignite the forges. Next, I needed to make a journey to the snow mountain, which would have all the remaining resources I would need. I swooped my way there, and at my destination, I found a Quetzal, which was a cool find. I also saw a bunch of ice wyverns, which were way above my pay grade, and I wouldn't be able to get one until I tamed a bison. Continuing on my original mission, I found an opening that led into the ice cave. Inside this cave, there were massive clusters of crystal as well as oil that were super easy to harvest. I got plenty of both resource, then I flew out of the cave to slaughter penguins for polymer. For some reason, there was not a single penguin in sight, and I figured they must have been hunted to extinction by me in a past life. With my original plan in the trash, I flew to the lava biome where I'd be able to find mantis to kill for polymer. Once I got there, I found a very powerful creature. Oh, and there's some pyramanes here. That is a tame we're gonna have to get at some point. A 140 male is the literal first one I find. That one's a really cool color too. I'm coming back for you, buddy. After some more flying, I spotted a couple mantises and I got straight to work slaughtering them. They were super easy to take down and I got over 100 polymer per kill, which was insane. Now I had everything I needed for cryo, so I began the journey home. I got a green drop on my way home that gave me an improved Equus saddle, and I also managed to get a pretty good yellow drop that gave me a super nice piece of fur armor. With that done, I grabbed all the materials from base I needed and I flew to the obelisk to craft the cryos. I was able to make 9 of them, which was plenty for my current needs, and day 13 was complete. Now that I had a way to transport tames, my plan was to get back to the challenge and tame an Equus. To prepare, I learned the engrams for ghillie suit and I made myself an entire set. With that done, I set out to the plains biome where they spawned. On my way, I got a yellow drop, which had some scuba flippers, but nothing else of real value. I also picked up my stone trap I used for the Griffin tame, and picked up Echo and a cryopod. Once I finally made it to the plains, I began searching for natural crops, and I saw a massive giga lurking that I would have to be careful of. I searched for a little bit, and I found the wild crops I was looking for that would be OP in helping me tame a horse. Not only that, but there was literally an Equus right next to me, so I put on my ghillie suit and got ready to tame it. I stalked it, and once I was in range, I fed it, which instantly tamed it. I couldn't believe one rock carrot got the job done, and since it was such an easy tame, I figured I'd find a better level to tame. I found a level 90, and after one feeding from the ground and one while on its back, he was tamed. I put him into a cryo, and I decided that today I would also try to tame the next creature on the list. This was the scorpion, and they spawned right next to me in the lava biome. I found a level 60, and I didn't even want to get my hands dirty, so I began shooting it while still in the sky. But my tame was soon interrupted. Oh, I don't want to mess with that guy. What were you? Oh, there's a level 140 female. I tried to continue the tame, but the pyromane almost ruined my day. Oh, we're on fire. Pyromane decided to choose violence. Ow, that hurt. That hurt a lot. Oh my gosh, what's with all the high level pyromanes? In the future, I would have to tame those 2 high level pyromanes because a breeding pair of that caliber would carry me in this challenge. After refocusing, I found a level 15 scorpion that I easily knocked out. Once it was down, I tried to protect it and I pulled a newbie move when I swooped down and one-shot it. I thought I was far enough away, but the poor dead scorpion would say otherwise. The third time was a charm, and when I found a level 55 scorpion, I knocked it out from the air. After it was sleeping, I cleared the area of bad creatures and I tamed her with some spoiled meat. I put her into a cryo, and after making it home, I threw out all of my dinos, which ended day 14. My plan for day 15 was to hunt down some alpha raptors in hopes of getting an improved crossbow. But before I could set out, I needed to craft some storage in my base, so I harvested the necessary materials and crafted up several of them. This allowed me to better organize my items and especially loot from drops. Once that was done, I flew to the main crater of Rag where a lot of alphas spawned. I swooped through the crater, keeping my eyes peeled for Cheeto dust. After a lot of flying, I spotted my first one, and it was a level 50, which would be easy to take down. I began slashing it like a fish in a barrel with my Griffin. I thought I wasn't in any danger until I made a mistake. Uh-oh. Fly, fly, fly. Ooh, that was dangerous. You can't get landed like that, because then they can actually hit me, which is not unacceptable. If I got landed, I could get stuck under the numerous amount of creatures, which would be guaranteed death. For the rest of the fight, I was super careful and I kept landing double hits on the alpha. It didn't take much longer until the alpha bit the dust. I immediately checked my inventory only to be super disappointed at the garbage loot it dropped. At the very least, Ragnar got a bunch of levels, and after pumping them, he was even more of a beast. I was extremely unsatisfied with that kill, so I thoroughly scoured the canyon to find another one. I flew through the entire thing with no luck, so I figured I would head home. I was preparing to leave when I spotted a green drop I wanted, and lo and behold, there was a level 145 alpha right next to it. This would be big XP once I killed it, so I began a swooping frenzy. I landed double hit after double hit, and I was amazed at how tanky the Raptor was. After a long fight, I finally landed the final blow and was again disappointed to not get a crossbow. I would have to find more alphas in the future because an improved weapon to knock out creatures would be essential. On my way home, I decided to be productive, so I looted a drop which ended up being garbage. I also wanted to see if I could loot some beaver dams for cementing paste. I was able to find one, and I was astonished when it didn't have a single piece of paste in it. Day 15 was almost over when I spotted a Moss Chops, and he was asking for Tinto berries, which was very doable. Tinto berry, we can do that. We can do that, buddy. Now we're talking. Compared to that guy who was asking me for bee honey, you're kidding me. I quickly tamed him up, and after getting back to base, day 15 ended. On day 16, I wanted to get the next saddle tame, which was the Procoptodon. I had a couple things I needed to do to prepare, but before I started, I couldn't help myself when I saw two drops nearby. I looted them both, and the first drop was slightly disappointing because the only thing I even wanted was cooked meat. But the second drop completely made up for it. Okay, it's just giving me a Mastercraft fabricated pistol? Are you kidding me? Oh, that is so sick, and I know we have a ton of this ammo too. So now they gave me the blicky. They gave me a piece. Oh, you're too kind, Ark gods. You are too kind. I was beyond happy to get such a strong weapon, and I went back home to get back to business. To prepare for the tame, I repaired my crossbow, and I made sure I had rare flowers in my inventory. This is because these flowers would be essential to the tame. I then went out of my base with one of my new sickles, and I harvested all the materials I needed to craft a ton of arrows. Once that was complete, I only needed to do one more thing before I was ready to tame a kangaroo. I needed to make a trip to the swamp biome so I could harvest some rare mushrooms. I swooped down into the biome, and on my way, I spotted a Dimorphodon. I figured this was an easy tame, and I wanted to get it out of the way. My strategy was to lead him to a safer area where I could bullet him and the tame would be easy. I shot him with a trank arrow that aggroed him, then I landed a bola on him. Once he was on the ground, I was stoked to find out he was a level 130, and I knew this tame was meant to be. After he was knocked out, I executed a massive croc for prime meat, and I got my new little buddy tame. My creative genius struck, and I decided to name my new bud Scrappy. With that tame done, I flew to an outcropping of trees and I chopped them down with my pickaxe. After I had plenty of rare mushrooms, I set off to the desert islands where Procoptodons can spawn. On my way, my inner loot goblin took hold and I had to loot some drops. Did we have anything good for Cappy to get his grubby hands on? Oh boy, do we! This drop was extremely good, and the best part was I kept getting free scuba gear, which would help me a ton with water tames. After getting my next drop, this trend continued and I got even more scuba and another mammoth saddle. The final drop I looted was pretty mid, but most importantly, I got a toilet so I could take some scenic dumps. With my looting spree over, I hunted for kangaroos in the desert. They were a lot more rare than I thought they would be, and I only found one which was a level 20. He was getting attacked by some dinos, so I protected him, then touched down to build my trap. Once I was ready, I gobbled down a bunch of rare flowers and proceeded to fail several attempts to trap him. It took me a while, but eventually he ran into the trap and I locked him inside. Now the tame was easy and I pumped him with arrows until he knocked, then I tamed him with the rare mushrooms I got from the swamp. I decided to name him Walter, and after we made it home, day 16 ended. When day 17 began, it was time to tame a Stego, and I was already ready for this, so I set off immediately. I had seen a bunch of them in the rocky plains next to my base, so that's where I started scouting. The first two I found were lackluster and not worth my time. So was the third Stego I found, but the fourth was a level 140 and would be perfect. That might be our guy right there. And honestly, we could do this the easy way, or we could do this the hard way. I could sit here and I could shoot it while on the back of my Griffin, aka the easy way, or the hard way. On the ground. And you know which way we're choosing? On the ground, baby. I made enough tranks to knock out the Stego, then I killed the extra Stego next to it so it would make the tame a little easier. After landing Ragnar, I started pumping her with arrows. I tried to land as many headshots as I could on the Stego, which would do more torpor than normal. I then just played the game of running when it got too close and shooting when I had some distance. If done right, this can be done for the entire tame. The 140 ran away from their original spot, and because of that, another Stego was able to join the fray. This made things much more complicated, having to avoid two at once. But I was managing pretty well and I had yet to take a hit. I felt like a star athlete in that nothing could stop me. But because of that overconfidence, I got grabbed by one of the Stegos and I had to unload an entire clip of my gun to get free. Also, because I got grabbed, I was out of stamina and couldn't run away, so I took several more hits. My armor was protecting me well though, and I continued to make progress. This tame felt like it was dragging on and it made me want an improved crossbow even more. After a long time, the Stego started running away for real this time, and I finally brought the beast down. Now that it was down, I had a moment to spare, so I wanted to get a yellow drop I saw in the distance. The drop had another piece of really nice fur, which would be essential to completing the snow cave later on. After returning to the tame, I picked a ton of bushes so I could feed it mejo berries. I waited for a while until it tamed, and I thought of the perfect name, Sally the Stego. Sally also had two babies, so I claimed them both and named them Sandy and Savvy. My new Stego got a pretty high HP stat, and I was stoked at how high the stats rolled. Once they were all cryoed, I set off back to base, and on my way I saw a Ceratosaurus. I decided to take him down so I could start working towards crafting a hemoglobin cocktail, which would be essential for this tame later on. Once I collected its spines, day 17 concluded. Day 18 was going to be a dual taming day, and I needed to tame a Pachy Rhino as well as a Galley. First, I needed to restock on narcotics, so I needed a bunch of spoiled meat. For some reason, I thought that taking a poop in a toilet full of meat would make them all spoil. So I set up my toilet, grabbed a bunch of meat, and got ready for a nice dump. At first, I was a bit of a shy pooper and couldn't go, but after a run, it happened. Yes, sir! Scenic poop, baby! Alright, now, I thought that would spoil all my meat. I guess not. Apparently that was not an actual mechanic in the game, so I split up all my meat and went out to harvest narco berries. Big Boy was perfect for the job, and he was harvesting narco berries crazy fast. In no time I had plenty, and I was about to make enough narcotics to last me a while. Now I was ready to go out and tame, so I flew to the blue obelisk area where some could spawn. I searched for a bit and I got a blue drop that gave me some free trank arrows. The entire first area I searched was a complete bust, and I didn't find a single one. These guys were a lot more rare than I thought they would be, and I would have to check out a different area. The second area was money though, and there was a full pack of 3. I decided to tame the level 100 Pachy Rhino the easy way, and I shot it from the back of my Griffin. It was extremely easy to shoot them from the sky, and they couldn't do anything to me. I chased them around like there were roaches on the bathroom floor until the one I wanted was feeling sleepy. She went down and I killed the remaining pack members so they wouldn't get in the way. Unfortunately, while I was taking them down, I hit a Bronto, so I had to kill it as well. I also made sure to collect its vertebrae just in case I needed it in the future. Now that the area was clear, I picked all the mejo berries I needed and I started feeding the Pachy Rhino. Once this tame was done, I was planning on making a trip to the desert islands to tame a Galley, but I saw one running right in front of me and it turned out to be a level 130. This could not be more perfect, so I set up my trap so I'd be ready once I could tame it. I fed the Pachy Rhino a few narco berries to keep it down until it tamed. I named her Patrika the Pachy Rhino, and I got ready to tame the Galley. Once I found it, I munched some rare flowers and tried to lead it into my trap. The Galley was ridiculously fast and it kept missing. To make things worse, when it finally ran inside, I was too slow to close the trap in time. My Griffin was also under attack from ants, and it was utter chaos. The Galley then started beefing with Ragnar, and I used this to my advantage to trap it. But now Ragnar was stuck in the trap, so I quickly snuck out before the Galley could escape. Now the hard part was over, and I knocked it out. I fed the Galley some berries, and I chose violence while I was waiting for it to tame. 2 babies too. I honestly don't care about these babies. I don't want them. You know what that means? Dang, that baby just take 8 bullets to the dome. Once I was done being a maniac, the Galley tamed, and I rightfully named her Can't Touch This. After picking up my trap and flying home, day 18 was over. On days 19 through 20, I wanted to knock several tames off the list, and my original plan was to tame an Iguanodon and a Mammoth. I also wanted to scout a specific base location I had in mind to see if it was good enough to build my main base there. To prep for these tames, I grabbed the narcotics I built in the previous day and I got to work building arrows. I was able to craft a few, but I ran out of thatch, so I quickly got some and I was able to make all the arrows I needed. With that done, I set out to the desert islands to find an Iguanodon. I also saw a yellow drop in the distance and I knew I had to get it. It gave me some angler gel and some more ammo for my pistol, which was nice. I just realized something. I accidentally tamed the galley out of order. The manta ray is supposed to be in between the galley and the Pachy Rhino, so that's my bad. Sorry about that, guys. I accidentally tamed the creatures out of order, which was a big mistake, so I went out immediately to rectify my mistake. I flew above the water surface and looked for a manta that wasn't too high of a level. When I found a level 55, it was perfect, and my strategy for this tame was to park Ragnar right on the water surface, then swim down to feed it. That way, I could still tame the manta, and if things went badly, I would have a quick way to escape. I painstakingly crept up to the manta, and I got one feeding, then retreated to safety. My character was super slow in the water, and when the manta swam far away from me, I had to reposition Ragnar to help me get close again. I went down for a second feeding, and this time I was in trouble because it wasn't hungry. He managed to jab me with his barb, which did a ton of damage to me, but luckily I was able to dodge further attacks by standing on its back. After waiting a bit more, I went in for a feed again, and this time I got the tame done. I was super happy to have fixed my mistake, and I had to quickly cryo the manta before I drowned. With that task done, I wanted to continue my original mission and go tame an Iguanodon. I scoured the islands and kept my eyes peeled on the floor as I glided through the air. After spotting my first one, I got out my spyglass and I was very surprised at what I saw. Are you kidding me? It's a 150! Okay, say less, that's the guy we're taming. 150 Iguanodon. That's awesome! I was super happy to have found a max level, and I figured the easiest way to tame this guy would be to use my trap. So I set up the entire thing, and by the time I was done, the Iguanodon had gotten seriously hurt. A pack of raptors were ripping him apart, and I got into the fray to help him. While I was fighting the raptors, I lost him, and once I found him again, it was too late. He croaked, and I was absolutely devastated to lose a max level. Now I needed to find another one, so I started scouting again, and I wasn't having any luck at first, but I did manage to find another alpha raptor. After another second of flying, I found a level 95 Iguanodon, which wasn't bad at all, and once I killed the alpha, I would tame it. With the levels from killing the last alpha raptors, Ragnar was a beast, and my double hitting routine was shredding the alpha. I had to land once for Stam, and I got bit a couple times, but I managed to get the job done. He's dead. Oh, we got a crossbow, we got a crossbow, we got a crossbow. Oh, baby, we got a crossbow. That's what I like to see. I mean, it's barely better, if at all. Okay. We got a better pickaxe and hatchet, though, too, from that guy. So it's pretty hype. Even though the crossbow wasn't much better, I still couldn't complain, and getting better harvesting tools was the cherry on top. With that done, I started taming the Iguanodon with my new crossbow, and I again decided to do this tame the hard way. I danced around it and used a rock to avoid its hits when necessary. In no time, he started to run away, and after I pursued him in one arrow, he tumbled to the ground. I picked some berries for him, and after feeding him, he tamed. I decided to name my new pal Ivar, and I set off to do a scouting mission to end these days. The base spot I had in mind is a giant spire towards the swamp side of the main crack. As I looked at the base spot, I noticed many desirable qualities. It was super high up, so no creatures can spawn and thus would be very safe. It also has a ramp to get up to it, so it would be easy to walk creatures up there. The icing on the cake was there was a small lake as well, which would be perfect for growing crops and having easy drinking water. With all that in mind, I had no doubt this was where I wanted to build my main base, and these group of days ended. My goal for day 21 was to tame a mammoth, and after grabbing one of my insane saddles, I was ready. So I set out on Ragnar to the warmer snow mountains by Blue Obelisk. The first mountain I visited had not a single mammoth in sight, but I did find something cool. The ice wyverns that ruled the territory seemed to have a nest, so in the future their egg was calling my name. With no mammoths on the first mountain, I set off to the second, and I had high hopes of finding a good level. If I got a strong one, it would be extremely helpful for building my base and gathering wood. When I got to the mountain, I was briefly distracted by a drop that gave me some structures before I started checking levels. Unbelievably, the first mammoth I saw was a level 130 and would be perfect, but I still decided to check around the mountain to see if I could find better. Is that a red drop? Wait, hold on. Hold the phone. No, that is not. If you guys didn't know, I'm very colorblind, so going for drops, it's like a gamble. I don't know what I'm getting. It could be yellow, it could be a green, it could be a red, who knows? The next turd I spotted had a 140 and I seriously could not ask for better, so I got ready to tame her. I landed on the ground and I shot her from as far away as I could, which would help to not aggro the entire herd. Because of this, only one additional mammoth was angry with me and I pumped it full of lead. Now the 140 mammoth was by itself, so it would be an easy tame, but I realized I had a big problem. The mountain was colder than the attitude of any woman I've ever talked to, and I was not going to be able to survive for long. Desperately wanted to stick around to finish the tame, but I wouldn't be able to get it knocked out without dying. I might have to make a sleeping bag and croak and come back, but I haven't died in this challenge yet, so I don't know if I want to die like that. I could die and respawn, which would allow me to finish the tame without getting my fur, but my ego couldn't handle that as my first death of the challenge. With only one clear option, I was determined to fly home as quick as possible. I made very good time getting back to base, and I grabbed my OP fur that would allow me to survive. I flew back to the tame with legendary speed, and I put on my fur, which just barely made it warm enough that I wouldn't take damage. I got right to work on the tame, and her torpor must not have went down much because she quickly began to run away. I chased her, and before long she was taking a nap. I got a bunch of mejoberries for her, and after a long peaceful wait, she was mine. I decided to name her Peaches, and as I put her into her cryopod, the day ended. I had special plans for day 22, but before I got to them, I realized I forgot to name some of my dinos, so I had to change that. I named my Moschops Mikey, my Scorpion Little Grabby, and my two horses Eddie and Frank. With that done, I wanted to make a big move and bring my boat close to where I wanted to build my new base. I wasn't planning on harvesting my base until I had a Doedicurus, which would make stone harvesting easy, but I still wanted to bring my tames to the area. I loaded up everyone on the boat, and it really felt like Noah's Ark with how many creatures cluttered the boat. Look at how many freaking tames are on there. That is ridiculous. My journey was a peaceful but long one, and I almost made it completely past the swamp when I spotted something cool. Wait, what is that? Is that a Drakeling right there? Oh, that is. That is a Drakeling right there. Oh, what level is he? I'm stuck inside of Max here. What level is that Drakeling? Where did he go? Oh, he's right there. Okay, he's level 95. Summer Drakeling. This was a good find, and I was very tempted to jump ship to tame it, but with all of my tames packed in the boat like sardines, I didn't want to risk the dangers of the swamp. At last, my journey was over, and I parked my boat next to a safe beach where my tames would stay until I could build my base. My stomach dropped as I realized I somehow lost Max on my journey. Did Max the Morellatops fall off? Hold on. He's somewhere in the... What the... Max had somehow learned the ability to fly, and I tried to cryo him to get him down, but it almost got me killed. So I whistled follow on him, and Max decided it was time to come down. With that crisis averted, it was time to get back to the challenge, and I needed to tame a Megaloceros. I wanted a high-level male of these guys because it would be a good thatch gatherer and would also help in building my base. I saw a couple low levels before I found a 145, but he was in some serious trouble. The area was riddled with dangers, and I was going insane just trying to protect him. To make things worse, there were several other stags in the area that made it super hard to keep track of him. Because of this, I lost him, and by the time I saw him again, it was too late. With that unfortunate loss, I found another stag, and it was a level 90, which was good enough for me. I wasted no time bullying him and branding him with arrows until he passed out. This time, I learned my lesson, and I made sure to kill all the bad creatures in the area. Once the area was safe, I fed him some mejoberries, and I knocked another tame off the list. I decided Big Hoss was the perfect name for him, and just as I was getting ready to leave, I almost lost my new friend. An entire group of Carnos led a coordinated attack, and I panicked. I needed to kill them with Ragnar, but before that, I whistled Hoss to run away so they wouldn't keep chomping down on him. Luckily, this worked, and I was able to save him from danger. After that mini heart attack, I went back to base, and to end the day, I wanted to make Big Hoss a saddle. I was just missing fiber, and after going ham with the sickle, I crafted it and day 22 was over. On day 23, I wanted to knock out 2 tames, the Diplo and the Terror Bird. I was not expecting to have any difficulties in these tames, and the only thing I needed to do to prep was make some bolas. I had everything I needed except thatch, and after getting some, I made several bolas. With that task done, I was ready to go and went off to find a Diplo. At first, my hunt was not going well in the slightest, and I was triggered that I even had to tame a Diplo. I spent a long time searching to no avail, and my patience was growing thin. I was about to rage quit when I finally found one and got some berries to passive feed him. I waited under his flabby belly and waited for him to get hungry again. I thought this tame would go smooth for the rest of the time, but Ark made sure to prove me wrong. The first disruption was a Dilo that started attacking me, and while trying to shoot it, I shot the Diplo, which reset my progress. I got back to the tame, and randomly a Rex that had been nowhere in sight tried to ruin my day. I made sure to teach the Rex that this was my jungle, and I yet again got back to this annoying tame. He just took an absolute massive dump on me. You're kidding me. This absolute rat just took a dump on me. This guy is gonna get the most diabolical name that I can think of. This tame was taking ages, and to make things worse, I wasn't paying attention to Ragnar and he was getting swarmed by raptors. By the time I noticed, he was extremely hurt and it was a super close call. I would have been beyond peeved if he had died, and I was very grateful that that didn't happen. After a long time waiting under the Diplo's fat belly, I finally got him. I made sure to keep true to my word and had named the Diplo Fat Cankles. With that tame out of the way, I started my hunt for a terror bird. I searched all around the mountains by Viking Bay and I was not having good luck. So I decided to switch spots, and on my way I got one of the best drops yet of the 100 days. Oh! Let's go. That's huge. This is a huge drop. It had improved flak boots, which over tripled the armor of my current ones, and I got a Doed saddle, which would save me the trouble of crafting one. Getting back on track, I found a huge pack of terror birds, and there were a couple high levels. Before I could tame one though, I needed to pick a few of the pack members off. As I was trying to kill them, a 140 dire bear made sure to ruin any chance I had when it devoured every last one of them. At this point, it had been a very rough day of Ark, and I was ready to break my monitor. After finding another terror bird, I bulleted it and began tranking it out. It didn't go down before the bola wore off, and I chased it through the forest until she tumbled to the ground. I gave my new terror bird some prime meat, and while I was waiting for her to tame, the dire bear tried to ruin my day even more. He almost killed Ragnar before I could react, but luckily after flying into the sky, the bear left me alone. Once the stupid bird finally tamed, I named her Tiff, and this stressful day finally ended. When day 24 began, I could finally tame a Doedicurus, and once I had one, I could build my base. I had a bit of prep work to do, and I started by force feeding Ragnar, who was still extremely low from the previous day. I wanted to make sure he was healthy because I definitely could not afford to lose my only flyer. I then tried to repair my flak armor, and I completely ran out of metal in the base, so in the future I would need to go on a metal run very soon. With my prep done, I flew towards the redwoods where I would have the best chance of finding a high level Doed. On my way, I had to fly through the murder snow, which is the coldest part of the map, and even with my good fur, I was still freezing to death. I also spotted a ridiculous amount of ice wyverns, and I would have to tread very carefully in this biome. Once I made it out of the snow, I got distracted when I spotted a yellow drop, and I had to get it. The drop had some pretty good saddles in it, which would help me in the future, but besides that, it was mid. Getting back on track, I spotted my first Doed, but it was a low level, so it wasn't worth my time. But I did spot an Archaeopteryx, which I wanted very badly. It would be easy to get this tame done, so I bulleted it from the sky and rained arrows down on it until it went down. Now that it was sleeping, I needed to take down the stupid amount of creatures in the area. Ragnar made extremely quick work of them, and I was able to land, feed my new guy Chitin, and get him tamed. Now that he was tamed, I made the horrible realization that all my cryos were full, and I forgot to throw out a lot of creatures at my base. Because of this, I had to make a really cruel decision. I needed 2 cryopod spots for my new buddy and my Doed that I was going to tame. So I decided to leave behind the 2 Stego babies to die. Sandy and Savvy, I'm sorry, you guys are getting abandoned. You guys are getting abandoned. I feel so bad. I'm like dad who went to get the milk and is never gonna come back for these guys. They're probably just gonna starve to death out here. Sorry, little one. I turned my back on them and they would never be seen again. Getting back to my original mission, I scouted several doeds and unfortunately none of them were good. I was flying through the forest looking for more when I pooped my pants IRL. Oh, there's a Thyla. Oh my gosh. I just pooped my pants thoroughly. That guy was so close to getting me off. Oh my gosh. I heard him like do his roar and jump, and I just barely lifted in time to not get dismounted. After changing my underwear, I finally found a level 130 doed that was definitely worth my time. I decimated a Carno in the area so it wouldn't interfere with my tame, and I got to work. I started tranking the super low doed and I was trying to shoot him in the tail and head. This is because he takes less torpor in his shell and I didn't want to waste arrows. As I was shooting him, I was hopeful he would go down before he curled into a ball. If he got too hurt, he would fold up and I would have no chance of knocking him out. Luckily, my prayers were answered and the little ball of chunk went down. Now this tame was in the bag, and after feeding him some Medjos, I knocked the tame off the list. I decided the perfect name for this guy was Meatball, and day 24 ended in success. Days 25 through 26 were a big moment in the 100 days, and it was finally time to build my main base. Normally, I am a horrible base builder, but the Ark devs finally added something to help me out. They added the template hammer, which would help me to build a house that looked better than a heap of garbage. To make it, I needed to go on a quick metal run, and I knew just where to go. Near the swamp, there's a secret metal cave that has a stupid amount of metal nodes inside. It took me a minute to find the entrance, but I broke my way inside and harvested enough for the time being. I then grabbed some wood to smelt it, and now I could craft the hammer. I messed around with it, and I saw all the cool templates I could build. Click to select a template. Oh, this is sweet. Viking longhouses, large medieval castle. Let's place this sucker. Dang, this thing is huge. Is this gonna be my new crib? Overall, the medieval castle was super cool, but it would take way too much time to build, so I settled on building a Viking longhouse. I set off to build the template where I wanted it when I saw a red drop, and you already know my loot goblin self could not resist. Oh baby! Rocket homing missile, and it gave me a flamethrower. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Oh my goodness. You could not be so kind, Ark devs. Wow. I was like a little kid on Christmas after getting that present, and I could not be more happy. After getting back to the task at hand, I placed this super cool looking longhouse up on top of the spire. Now it was time to move all my stuff and tames. I had a bunch of crowd tames in my inventory, so I threw them all out, and I started with Meatball since I would need to use him and he would need to be awake. I then went down to my raft and crowd as many tames as I could. I also grabbed as much gear and resources as I could without making Ragnar overweight. Once I got to the new base spot, I unloaded the gear into a holder chest and then threw out all my tames. I continued this cycle several more times, and it took me multiple trips to grab all of my stuff. I did end up leaving some basic resources that I didn't want to carry, but for the most part I took everything of value. I also made sure to pick up all my crafting stations so I could place them in the new house once it was built. With the painfully tedious move over with, I could finally start building my new crib. I started by harvesting an absolute boatload of trees, and I'm sure I angered the Lorax because I was definitely not speaking for the trees. Once she was completely full, I took out Meatball and I surprisingly filled his inventory in no time. He got a ridiculous amount of stone per rock, and I was super happy I waited to build until I got him. Next, I needed to get thatch and fiber, so I took out Haas on a big thatch run and I went ham with my sickle. Now that I had all the major resources to build my house, I got ready to go on a crafting frenzy. The first structure I wanted to build was a stone pillar, so I crafted up the required amount and I got ready for the first auto build. The hammer has an option to automatically place the structures in your inventory, but I found out the hard way you have to change the hammer settings to template tier only. It placed the stone pillars where wood ones were supposed to go, and my house would have looked awful if I kept it. So off camera, I quickly picked up all my pillars and replaced the template. This time, I got auto build correctly and the stone pillars placed where they were meant to go. Now I was in the groove and I got into grinding mode. I built structure after structure and did several phases of auto building. This went for many rounds and I was able to get a large percentage of the house built. Halfway through the build, I also had to take out all of my harvesting tames again to do another resource run. With that done, I was in the home stretch of building my house, and I kept crafting structures, then auto building until my new crib was finally done. Man, that looks sick. Better than anything I could build. There's a reason it's a template. There's a dang reason it's a template. All right, let's go check out the inside of it. The inside was just as cool as the outside, and I got to work moving my stuff inside. I made sure to place my crafting structures, my bed, and the most important part, the toilet. I then moved all my stuff inside and put all of my gear chests on the back wall of the house. Once that was done, my work was finally complete and my main base was now set up, which ended these days. Now that my house was done, it was time to get back to the challenge, and day 27 was dedicated to taming a Sarco. To prepare, I needed trank arrows, and luckily I had plenty of narcotics left, so I just needed to craft some arrows. I got the materials I needed for a full stack and I converted them into tranks. With that done, I started scouting the swamp for a high level Sarco. I wanted a really high level for a couple of reasons. Sarcos are an extremely good water tame because they are semi-tanky, don't need oxygen, and you can't get stunned off the back of them. With all these good qualities, they make a super good water mount, and having one would be essential for water tames in the future. I thoroughly scouted through the swamp, spyglassing Sarco after Sarco, but I wasn't having any luck in the slightest. I took a temporary break from searching to get a yellow drop nearby, and oh boy was I glad I did. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me? That single-handedly might be the best drop I've ever gotten. Oh my gosh, this armor is insane. This drop just hand-delivered me some of the best flak I have ever seen, and it would greatly increase my survivability in the future. The icing on the cake was the next Sarco I spotted was a max level, and I cannot believe my luck. I thought it would be easiest to use my trap to tame it, so I set it up while dealing with the numerous creatures that attacked me. Hordes of leeches latched onto poor Ragnar, and I had to kill many annoying Dilos. Once I was done, I went to get its attention, and the tame did not start out smooth in the slightest. The Sarco dismounted me from Ragnar, and I was left alone with the giant croc in the water. Luckily, I was able to recover, and I made my first attempt to trap it, which failed horribly. After that fail, the Sarco tried to attack a snail, and an Ark glitch miraculously helped me out. Is he stuck? Okay. Well, that might be one way to tame the Sarco. Oh, it's stuck on a snail in its shell. Are you kidding me? Well, that's maybe the first time that an Ark glitch has actually helped me out. The Sarco was completely stuck on the snail, and I took full advantage of this to easily lay arrows into it until it was out. I could not believe my luck in this day, and I went to get prime meat to finish the tame. After harvesting a body from a nearby fight, I got the meat I needed, and I waited for my new max level croc to tame. While I was waiting, I noticed something strange, and there was a Drakeling hardcore beefing with a Phiomia. It was so fast I could barely spyglass it, but I noticed it was a level 145. I couldn't believe my insane luck was continuing, and I would most definitely have to tame the Drakeling once the Sarco was done. Once she ate her last piece of meat, I named her Lady Killer Croc, and I got straight to work on the Drakeling tame. First, I helped it deal with the Phiomia, then I put a torch on my hotbar and pulled it out. This attracted the little dragon, and she came over to sit on my shoulder. Now the taming process had started, and I needed to kill something for XP. I pumped the Dilo full of lead, and once it died, she was ready for feeding number 1. This went by really quick, and I went to the third phase, which was crafting. I made a whole random assortment of tools and armor until I had enough XP and I got her tamed. I was super stoked to have this new tame, and I came up with the perfect name of Pixie. This tame would give me a speed buff to me and any creature I rode, which was super hype. After throwing out my new Sarco at base, day 27 ended. On day 28, I wanted to set up my farm so I could grow some crops, and I wanted to get the next saddle creature, a moth. To begin, I harvested some wood with peaches, and I had all the other resources already. I then crafted 4 stone foundations so I would have room for the crops. I then made 4 actual crop plots, which would allow me to have one of each kind of crop. Finally, I made a water intake and a water tap. Now I was ready to set up my farm, and I laid out my base of stone foundations next to the pond. I then placed the water tap and all of my crop plots. Finally, I put the water tap in between each plot so they would all be irrigated. Now I was ready to plant my crops, and I made a sad realization. Do you know who died that really stinks? Who would have been perfect for this? Our poor guy
dad bod died starving to death while we were building the house.
Refocusing, I harvested a bunch of bushes with Big Boy, which helped me to get all 4 types of seeds. I then force fed him an absolute boatload of stimberries to make him poop like crazy. Once that was done, I planted all 4 seeds and I fertilized them with Big Boy's poop. With that, the farm was set up and I would have crops in no time. Now I could focus on finding a moth, so I made the long flight across the entire map. I didn't see any moths in the mountainous part of the desert, but once I got deeper in, I spotted 2 of them. I bullet the level 50 and I started pumping it with arrows. The moth had a surprisingly super high torpor, which allowed it to escape the bola, and the stupid little guy took a dump on me then ran away. I made sure to chase it down, and after a few more arrows it fell out of the sky. Once I picked some berries for it, the tame didn't take long at all and I knocked another creature off the list. I decided to fittingly name her number 1 pooper and the day concluded. My plan for days 29 through 30 was to run a double tame and get an Anky as well as a Saber. I had everything I needed for this, so I went out straight away and I got a yellow drop on my way to Viking Bay.
More flak armor, please.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me. You can't make that up. You literally can't even make that up. I got yet another piece of Ascendant Flak armor as well as an air conditioner, and it was a great start to the day. Once I made it to the spot where Ankies and Sabers could spawn, I started scouting. I needed to tame an Anky first before a Saber, so I was mainly looking for them, but I did find a 130 Saber, which would be a good option. I continued my hunt and I flew all throughout the region. I was having zero luck finding an Anky, and the more I flew, the more peeved I got. Until eventually I saw 2 of them, and one was a low level but the other was exactly what I was looking for. The area was super dangerous, but for some reason I decided I would be fine not clearing out any of the bad creatures. I completely skipped that step and began pumping the 140 with arrows. I realized this might have been a bad mistake after the 140 ran down the hill right into harm's way. I tried to swoop in and kill the creatures, but before long the Anky was swarmed and was in some serious trouble. Now the Anky was extremely hurt and I knew I probably wouldn't be able to down it anymore.
But the Anky is probably toast, unfortunately. Yeah, dang it, bro. I screwed the pooch so bad on that.
That was a huge mistake and it cost me a really high level Anky. At the very least, I quickly found a couple more Ankies, and this time I learned from my lesson. The very first thing I did was kill every dangerous creature in sight. I then killed the lower level of the 2 Ankies and started knocking out the one I wanted. Unlike the 140 from earlier, this guy's torpor was much lower, so it didn't take as long until he was taking a nice snooze. I picked some berries for it, and while I was waiting, I made sure to craft a couple bolas for the Saber tame. Once that was done, I also realized that Pixie could be used as my own personal parachute and that I would never take fall damage again. After that cool discovery, the Anky was tamed and I named her Annie. Now, all that was left for the day was to get a Saber, and luckily I was able to find the 130 from earlier. I shot him once to get his attention, then I bullet him to trap him in place. While he was stuck, I took full advantage of shooting him and even hit him with my crossbow to do extra torpor. Once he was free, he was on the very verge of being knocked out, so I chased him down for a while until a final arrow finished the job. I then absolutely destroyed a Carno Peregrine Falcon style to get some prime meat, and I got my new Saber buddy tamed. I decided to name him Muncher, and after throwing out both my new tames at base, these days ended. On day 31, I needed to tame a Pteranodon, and I also wanted to set up a beer barrel since many upcoming tames required beer. I was all ready for the Pteranodon tame, so I had no prep, but I decided to go on a metal run before I left. So I flew down to the hidden metal cave and glided into the entrance I broke earlier. I started harvesting right away until I got 300 metal, which was about the max Ragnarok could carry without being overweight. I then ferried the metal to my forge and I decided to do one more run so I could thoroughly stock up. After getting another full load of metal, I flew it to the forge. I then grabbed some wood from Peaches, which allowed me to get the forges roaring. With that metal cooking, it was time to go out on my taming mission, and while I was out, I needed to loot some beaver dams for paste. As I was flying towards Viking Bay, I spotted a red drop and absolutely needed it. This time the red drop was kinda mid and it didn't give me anything that was better than what I had. I also saw a yellow drop that baited me hardcore and it was stuck in the ground. This seems to be a very bad issue with Ragnarok and it made me very ticked off. Now it was time to grab some paste, so I flew to the beaver sanctuary and landed next to a giant dam. I then looted it and almost got myself killed.
Drop this so it respawns. And it's,
Oh my gosh! Ragnar, help me out, brother. Come over here, buddy. Help me out, Ragnar. Ooh. Oh my gosh, look at how many beavers there are. You know what? This is gonna be the beaver massacre. I'm tired of you beavers. With my cementing paste harvesting adventure over, I started scouting the stupid amount of pterodons above Viking Bay. They were everywhere and it was not hard to find a 130, which was good enough. I waited for him to land, and as he did, I bullet him, locking him in place. I then put 2 arrows into his dome, which put him right to sleep. Next, I needed prime meat, so I executed order 66 on a nearby aloe and got plenty of prime. After a short wait, my new backup flyer was tamed, and I decided to name him Pike. I made the journey back to base, and I threw Pike out of his cryopod. To finish the day, I wanted to set up a beer barrel, and I was only missing wood, so I took Peaches out for a quick run. I then carried the wood to my smithy and loaded everything I needed inside, including the metal I just smelted. I then crafted up the beer barrel, and I also made a wood foundation to place it on. Next, I grabbed a bunch of thatch and berries which were required to brew beer. Day 31 concluded as I placed down my new barrel and loaded it up with all the proper supplies. My plan for day 32 was to go on a dual swamp taming adventure to get the next 2 saddle tames, which were the Capro and the Beelzebufo. To prepare, I repaired my crossbow and I made a bunch of arrows from the supplies in the smithy. I had plenty of narcotics still, so I made a bunch of tranks and I set out. On my way to the swamp, I realized I also needed bolas, so I harvested all the materials for it and crafted up a bunch of them. With that done, I was totally ready, so I began scouting the swamp, spyglassing every Capro and Frog I saw. There were a ridiculous amount of them, and I scouted creature after creature to no avail. Eventually, I did find a level 100 frog, which would be good enough for me, but I needed to get a Capro first. After a few more seconds of flying, I found a level 130 and a level 100 Capro right next to each other. The 130 was my target, so I prepared to kill the weaker one. I couldn't swoop at it with Ragnar since they were too close together, so there was only one logical decision. I pulled up on them with my blicky and started capping the Capro like crazy. He was surprisingly tanking a lot of shots though, and at some points my aim was extremely embarrassing. Finally, the weak Capro died and I cleared the rest of the bad creatures from the area. I then landed on the tallest rock I could find and got ready for the tame. The rock was too high up for her to reach me and I started tranking it out. Even though the rock was tall, I still made sure to back up and crouch when she tried to lunge at me. Oh yeah, you ain't getting me, pal. I'm not getting caught lacking with that. Before long, the Capro began to run and I chased it down while shooting it. It only took a couple more arrows before she was down and I killed a Sarco to clear the area and get prime meat. Once putting prime into her inventory, the Capro immediately tamed and I gave her the fitting name of Gnasher. As I finished typing the name, a parasite tried to ruin my day, so me and my new friend taught it that we were not to be trifled with. After cryoing Gnasher, it was time to tame the frog. The frog was rightfully angry after taking an arrow in between the cheeks and chased after me. My strategy was to shoot him a couple times while he could still move, then after a few shots bullet him. I did just that, and once he couldn't move, he had just the right amount of torpor to go down before escaping. Man, this is going great. This is like maybe the smoothest swamp taming adventure that I've ever had, by far. Put some food in his inventory. Normally things do not go well in the swamp in the slightest. Once the frog was tamed, I named him Chunky Glunky for some reason. After making it back to base, I threw out both my tames, which ended the day. On day 33, I wanted to get the next saddle tame the Aranio, and while I was in the area, tame a dung beetle. To prepare, I grabbed my ghillie suit and I learned the engram for bug repellent. After looking at the recipe, I had everything I needed except for pelt, so I went out to get some. I flew towards the snow mountain to kill some mammoths, and while I was flying, I spotted a yellow and a red drop in the distance, which I would most definitely need to get. I slaughtered a poor herd of mammoths with Ragnar by repeatedly dive bombing them, and I got plenty of pelt for my needs. With that done, I went to get the drops, and the yellow one ended up being decent. The highlight was a super good Argent saddle, which would be clutch when I could tame one in the future. Unfortunately, the red drop was an absolute letdown, and it didn't have anything that got me excited. Yeah. Again, I guess all drops can't be winners, but I'm complaining when I've gotten like some of the best luck I've ever had. After making it back to base, I harvested the 2 crops I needed and I realized they had only grown enough for me to make 1 repellent. As I grinded it up, I realized I would have to make it count and I couldn't afford to make any mistakes on this tame. Before I left, I quickly grabbed a couple of my Dinos poop so I could tame the dung beetle, and then I set out. I scouted around and I wanted to find a low level spider which would really help me to finish this tame since again I only had 1 repellent. The first one I found was a level 15, but it was absolutely swarmed with bad creatures. Also, there was not a dung beetle in sight, which was a huge negative since I also needed the effects of the bug repellent to tame one. Because of this, I decided to look for a dung beetle and see if I could find one that was close to a spider. My prayers were answered, and not only was I able to find a level 25 beetle, but there was also a level 20 spider right next to it, which was perfect. Now that I had located my 2 tames, I needed to clear the area of all the dangerous creatures. I massacred a boa and a mantis in the area, and I thought it was safe, so I got ready for the tame by putting on my ghillie. But a pyroman had encroached way too close, and I had no other choice but to take it down. Lucky for me, it was an extremely low level and was easy to kill. Now the area was finally safe, so I applied my bug repellent and began stalking the spider. I had to be extremely careful to stay directly behind it, because if I wasn't, even with the bug repellent, it would attack me. After walking behind it for a while, I saw my opportunity and got one feeding off. Now I just had to wait long enough until it got hungry again and I could finish the tame. After patiently waiting, I seized my opportunity and I crossed this annoying tame off the list. Now that I had a spider, I wasted no time running to the dung beetle and I got it tamed in one poop. I named my beetle Poop Machine and my spider Wicked. I began my journey home, and as the day was about to end, I decided to quickly loot a yellow drop. It was surprisingly pretty good, and I got improved flat gauntlets, which was something I didn't have. As I made it back to base, I threw out all my new tames and the day ended. I didn't know it at the time, but I would soon call these days the Swamp Saga of Misery, and I was in for a serious spanking from Ark. My initial plan was to only spend one day in the swamp to tame a Parasaur. To prepare, I grabbed the platform saddle I had, and next I needed to make narcotics as well as cook up some food. So I split up a bunch of meat from Ragnar's inventory and I put a full stack on the campfire to cook. Next I ran out with Big Boy and went to town on bushes around my base. Once I had a ton of berries, I ran inside and crafted a boatload of narcos. While they were grinding in the pestles, I needed to make arrows, so I got flint and thatch, then made a full stack of arrows. With that done, I was ready for my taming mission and I started scouting for a Parasaur. I had my heart set on a high level for some reason, even though I couldn't think of a single use for one. I scouted a bunch of Parasaurs in the area and it didn't take me long to find a 140, which would be my target. I was getting ready to clear the area when I saw a Diplocalus and I decided to make this a dual taming day. I slaughtered a bunch of the bad creatures in the area with Ragnar, then got ready for my spontaneous tame. I bullied the Diplocalus and pumped her with arrows until she went down. I then put Prime in her inventory, and while I was waiting for her to tame, I set up my stone gates. I thought a Parasaur would fit into the gates, so my entire plan was to trap it inside. With that done, my first tame was complete and I decided to name her Dirtface.
I think you guys can see why I named him Dirtface. Okay, let's put Dirtface into a cryopod.
I was in super high spirits after that easy tame and I felt like nothing could stop me. Now it was time to tame the Parasaur and I shot it to get its attention. I led it towards the box and I quickly realized my entire plan to trap it was buns. It definitely did not fit in the gates and I would have to do this tame the hard way and chase the dang thing across the entire swamp. I started hovering over the Parasaur and landing well-timed shots into it. It was super easy at first, but it soon became very stressful when the Parasaur ran towards all sorts of dangerous creatures in the swamp. I continuously had to try and lead it away from dangerous areas and make sure it wasn't going to get killed by anything. Combining that with the fact the Parasaur had an insanely high torpor, I was getting fed up with how long this tame was lasting. After lots and lots of arrows, the beast finally went down. Now you might be wondering, how did Cappy mess this up now that it was safely knocked out? The answer is that I got extremely greedy as per usual. I saw a bunch of Dimetrodons in the area and I wanted to make this a triple tame. Before I did that though, I did one thing right and cleared the area of all the bad creatures. Now I was going to leave the Parasaur without food and let it starve while I quickly tamed a Dimetrodon. The first thing that did not go in my favor was the fact that when I landed, a disgusting amount of leeches swarmed me. After dealing with them and a numerous amount of other creatures that started attacking me, I could finally start the third tame. I saw a level 95 Dimetrodon and I decided this was my target. I started tranking the little bugger and this guy must have had a drug problem because his tolerance to narcotics was ridiculous. I pumped well over 20 arrows into it and he would not go down. To make things worse, I realized I forgot the food I cooked and I was starving. I decided to thug it out anyway and see if I could get him down. I proceeded to shoot all the rest of my arrows into the little rat only for him to tank every last one. Now I needed to restock an arrow, so I decided to quickly run back to base to get some. I flew back as fast as possible, and once I was there, I quickly grabbed Megaberries for the Parasaur, then grabbed my cooked meat and the extra narcotics I left behind. With that, my pit stop was done and I thought everything would be fine. Little did I know that because I left render distance, I allowed every bad creature to respawn. Once I got back, I decided to start knocking out a level 25 Dimetrodon since I figured the 95 from before would probably die if I tried to trank it now. I was getting hounded by the new spawns and I was quickly getting annoyed. I managed to take everything down and I continued to knock out the level 25. I thought I had everything under control until I heard crunching behind me. I turned around to the lovely sight of a 140 Dinosuchus killing my downed Parasaur.
Oh no, wait. Is that guy?
No. No.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh.
Instead of feeding my Parasaur right away like an intelligent human, I tried to tame a Dimetrodon and now I lost literally all of my progress. To say I was pissed is an understatement and I was ready to break my setup. Besides the difficult tame, these days had been for nothing and I didn't have enough tranks to tame another Parasaur. To salvage these miserable days, I went back to base and harvested some resources to make myself more arrows. I then converted them all into tranks and flew back to the swamp yet again with my head hung in shame. This time, I was going to tame the lowest level Parasaur possible since it seemed like all I could handle. I found a level 25 and got back to more shooting off the back of my Griffin. Like the other Parasaur tame, it started getting attacked by all sorts of stuff and I had to save it from a Dilo that managed to almost kill it. But I finally managed to get it down and I put Megos into his inventory. I protected him until he tamed and I named him Cheeto. With how horrible this day was, I knew I needed to finish what I started and tame a Dimetrodon. I found the lowest level I could find and I shot it until it went down. I yet again had to clear the area, but once I was done, I fed him and got him tamed. I named him Darren and I wasted no time getting the heck out of the swamp. These days had been an absolute nightmare, but I managed to tame 3 new creatures and the swamp saga ended when I threw out all my new tames at base. On day 37, I wanted to get the next 2 saddle tames done with, and these tames were the Chalico and the Pelagornis. Luckily, my beer barrel had brewed 2 beer, which was perfect, but I needed to craft jars to put it in. So after quickly grabbing my ghillie suit, I made 3 water jars which allowed me to bottle the beer, and I threw out my old water skin I had been using. I bottled it up and set off on Ragnar to the snow mountain close to my base because I knew they could spawn there. I lucked out almost immediately when I found a 145, but I didn't know if I had enough beer to tame such a high level. Either way, he was in a fight and I decided to save his life. I really didn't think 2 beer would be enough, so I decided to scout for a lower level. It didn't take me long to find a level 15 and I knew he would tame in 1 beer, so I decided to try my luck with the higher level. If he didn't tame over halfway after a single feed, I would know I couldn't get him and I could go for the lower level. I landed next to him and I made the classic mistake of not clearing the area. I snuck up on the Chalico and fed it 1 beer which got it 70% tamed. I was in the middle of my celebration when a Daedon ruined my tame. This is what I got for not clearing the area, and I did my absolute best to help the Chalico kill the pig. I managed to save its life yet again, and now I wouldn't take anything less than taming the high level. I figured my beer barrel would probably produce another beer soon, so I went back to base to see if I could manage to get 1 more. Luckily for me, after a short wait, the barrel made 1 more and I bottled it up, then flew back to the Chalico. This time, I was going to make sure the area was safe and there seemed to be only 1 Daedon in the area. I started fighting with Ragnar and for some reason, the stupid pig ignored me and went straight for my tame. No. You stupid pig. How did he aggro on him like that? I could not believe that the Chalico died like that, and after all the trouble I put in to try and tame it. I was beyond peeved, and this only added to the rage I felt from the swamp adventure in the previous day. After the pig died, I made sure to disrespect him.
And you know what, Daedon? Just for that, you ruined my day. You ready?
With no other option, I went to tame the low-level guy, and my only consolation prize was that after 1 feeding, she was mine. I named her Beer Belly, then I set out to Viking Bay to find a Pelagornis. I spotted one immediately, and after an easy bola, I knocked it out. I also saw an Ichthyornis, and I decided I wanted to get it too. I also bulled the little guy and knocked it out. I then killed a fish to get fish meat, which was necessary for both tames. Once they were both done, I named the Pelagornis Momo and the Ichthyornis Snatcher. After making it home, I decided to throw out all 3 of my new tames and day 37 ended. My plan for days 38 through 39 were to go on my first real water taming adventure to get a donkey. But before I set out, I knew these guys had incredibly high torpor and I wanted to try my luck at getting a better crossbow to help me down one. I flew through the main canyon and I didn't see any at first, but after a thorough search I found a level 60. This was light work for Ragnar, and after a bunch of dive bombs the Raptor was toast. Yeah, he's down. Oh, we got a crossbow, we got a crossbow. Yes, yes. Thank you, Ark. Thank you. Okay, that must be my consolation prize for the absolute hell that I went through in the swamp. I was beyond hyped when I got a crossbow that was much better than my current ramshackle one, and I flew back to base. When I got there, I decided to use the stored XP from my Drakeling on Ragnar since the alpha gave me a boatload. It gave me a journeyman key, which was sweet, and tomorrow I would go on a treasure hunt for the horde. Getting back on track, I prepped everything I would need for this water adventure. My first task was to craft a fabricator so I'd be able to repair my scuba gear in the future. I was only missing spark powder, and after grinding some, I crafted the fabricator, then placed it in my base. With that done, I grabbed all the improved scuba gear I had, which would hopefully make this tame a breeze. Next, I needed to craft the Sarco saddle so I could use my max level croc for this tame. I was only missing fiber, and after slicing some bushes, I made it. My final task before I was ready was to craft some more narcotics to make sure I had plenty of tranks. I hopped on my trusty berry gatherer big boy and I got to work harvesting. Once I was done, I made plenty of narcos and now I was ready for the tame. I left Pixie behind just in case something happened, and I flew to my old raft, then deployed into the dangerous ocean. As I was swimming towards the blue ob where donkeys are known to spawn, I was having PTSD from how bad my prior ocean experiences have been. I hate the ocean possibly even more than the swamp, and I was praying for a smooth experience. Once I made it to my final destination, I killed a Megalodon so I would have taming food. I then put on my scuba and I dove into the depths. I was extremely wary and there were electric eels and sharks all around me. I was very fortunate when my search for a donkey did not take long in the slightest, and I found a level 15 which could not have been more perfect. I converted a bunch of my arrows into tranks and I got to work knocking it out. This area seemed pretty safe overall as far as Ark's oceans go, and I only had a few sharks chasing me, which was no big deal for my Sarco. I continued to pump arrow after arrow into the armored brute, and even for such a low level, its torpor was very high. I finally brought it down, and when I saw that an anglerfish was chasing me, I had no hesitation taking the opportunity to tame it. I figured I might as well since I was in the water anyway, and I was even more convinced when I saw it was a 135. Just like the donkey, this small fish had a huge amount of torpor, so the tame was going to last a while. Also, I had several sharks on me that made it an annoying game of dodging while shooting. It took a while until the angler finally went down, and now I could focus on securing these two tames. As soon as either of these creatures tamed, the megalodons that were chasing me would go straight for them, which would stop me from cryoing them. So I tried to take them down with my Sarco, only to realize there were multiple max levels in the group and they were way above my pay grade. I bolted away from the sharks and fed my donkey, which tamed it immediately since it had been starving. I wasted no time cryoing it, and I was pumped that taming it had gone so smoothly. With that done, I put food in the angler's inventory and kited around the sharks until it was tamed. I named my new angler Blinky, and after putting him into a cryopod, I safely made the journey home to end these successful water taming days. When day 40 began, I had only two things in mind, and that was to claim my dragon horde as well as tame a dire bear. I consumed the horde and it was all the way across the map from me. I began the long flight to get there, and I realized I might be in for a tough time when the horde was in the middle of the wyvern den. At first the marker showed that it was on the ground below me and it was surrounded by lightning wyverns. So I was planning on how I was going to attack, and I landed on the arch above it. I must have been close enough in vicinity for it to spawn, and it spawned on me just as a fire wyvern narrowly missed a breath attack on me. I immediately engaged in combat, but I realized I was about to run out of stam, so I tried to run away. I did my best to gain stam for a couple seconds, and I got absolutely torched while doing so. I was only able to get half my stamina, and I figured my best course of action would be to quickly grab the crate, then bolt away. When I saw my opportunity to grab it, I swooped down at lightning speed and quickly pressed the grab all items button. I didn't have time to look at what I got, and I was in serious trouble.
We gotta go, man. We gotta go. Oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in some trouble. If there was a definition to the word puckered, that moment would be it.
I managed to narrowly escape the numerous wyverns, and I was completely intact except for my underwear. The drop had a Mastercraft assault rifle BP, which was pretty insane and could be useful for the final boss if crafted. Besides that, it had some useful ammo and some sweet veggie cakes, which would save me the trouble of crafting them. Once I got back to base, I made a preserving bin and placed it next to my fabricator. I then put some spark powder inside to power it and stored the cakes in there so they wouldn't spoil. With that done, I could focus on the Dire tame, and I needed to restock on narcotics before I was ready to go out. Big Boy helped me out yet again, and I got the narco berries I needed to make a good chunk. Next, I needed to make more arrows, and after grabbing some supplies from the smithy, I made a bunch. Now that everything was done crafting, I set out to find a good level, and I was hopeful I would find the 140 bear that was terrorizing me on day 23. I scouted a bunch of bears, and I wasn't able to find the same one, but I did find a 135 female, which would do perfectly fine. I set up my gates to trap it, and I was very hopeful it would be an easy trapping process. This was not the case though, and I failed the first attempt and the second, and Ragnar was taking some serious damage. After a couple more fails, I finally got it to walk inside, and I managed to shut the final door behind it. I thought this tame was in the bag, and I got to work shooting the bear. I timed all my arrows perfectly, so when it got bloody, I thought nothing was wrong. But this couldn't be farther from the truth, and the bear croaked, which ticked me off beyond belief. Oh, what? She died? Was I shooting her too fast? Wait, what? Wait, what? She must have been injured beforehand. What? Oh my. Bruh, Ark, you are being so mean to me today. It's unbelievable. My only comfort was the fact I quickly found another 135 bear, but I needed to go through the painful process of trapping it again. After getting it inside, I killed a dimorph so I could feed it to the bear halfway through the tame to make sure it didn't die like the last one. I then tranked the bear like crazy and fed it like planned, which fully healed it. This allowed me to bring the beast down, and I killed a Carno for Prime. The bear quickly tamed, and I named her Boomba to end the day. The moment day 41 began, I realized that I made a mistake yet again, and I accidentally skipped taming the thorny dragon. So my only goal was to fix this and to maybe get a non-saddle tame while I was at it. I had plenty of tranks for this tame, and the only thing I needed to do to prep was repair my crossbow. Once that was done, I wasted no time hopping on Ragnar and set off to the desert. On my way, I saw a drop I wanted to get, and I got even further distracted by a bunch of griffins below me that I had to spyglass. Ooh, a 145. Okay, we might have to tame that guy. That was an awesome find, and although that griffin was the same gender as Ragnar, he could still help me to build a strong breeding line. Continuing on my journey, I looted the yellow drop, and it wasn't crazy good, but it did get me a blueprint for a Zyphact and a saddle. After making it to the desert biome, I started scouting thorny dragons, and I found several that were not the best level. I figured since there were so many of them in this biome, I would keep hunting, and I ended up spotting a Ceratosaurus while I was looking. I would need to collect these guys' spines for its cocktail in the future, so I had to take it down. Ragnar made quick work of it, and I got back to scouting. Not long after, I found a level 145, and I got to work clearing the area. There was genuinely a ridiculous amount of creatures around, and it took me a while to slay them all. Once that was done, I shot the thorny dragon and led it up the hill where it would be even safer. It was slow enough that it was easy to outmaneuver and still land shots on it. The only hitch in the taming process was a terror bird that started attacking me, but after dealing with it, I managed to get the thorny dragon asleep. I didn't have any prime meat on hand, so I easily massacred an RG, then fed it. While I was waiting for it to tame, I decided I wanted to go farther into the desert to tame a vulture. So I set out, and on my way, I killed yet another Cerato for spines. After making it to the dunes, I found a bunch of vultures, and for some reason, I thought they were a knockout tame. So I shot the first one I saw and killed all the others that swarmed me. When I got off of Ragnar, I quickly realized they were a passive tame, so I went to find a different one. I saw a different vulture land, and it was super easy to get it tamed. Now that I completed that tame, I put it into a cryo, and I flew back to get my thorny dragon, then also put her into a cryo. After I made it home, I threw up my tames to name them. I named my thorny dragon Big Spiky, and I named my vulture Sal to end the day. Now that my mistake was rectified, it was time to get back to the challenge, and on day 42, I needed to tame a mantis. I definitely had some prep to do for this tame, and I started by grabbing my ghillie suit. Next, I needed to make more bug repellent, so I grabbed my citronal as well as my rock carrots. This allowed me to make 9 repellent, which was nice, and I would have some wiggle room if I accidentally messed up. With that out of the way, I needed to get the taming food for the mantis, which was rhino horns. On my way, my inner loot goblin got excited.
And maybe get this red drop. Oh boy. This mountain is my favorite thing ever because there's always just a red drop or yellow drop at the top. Oh, it's a ring drop too. Oh my gosh, this could be really good. And oh my gosh. I just grabbed that quick because it was about to expire, but oh my gosh. We got a Mastercraft fabricated sniper that is so good. I was a little kid on Christmas morning and I was beyond hyped at how good that drop was. This was an insane start to the day and I got back to my task of hunting rhinos. They were all over the mountain, and with Ragnar it was a piece of cake to collect them. After getting 5 horns, I felt that was plenty, so I set off to the lava biome to find a good mantis. As I got there, I yet again spotted the 140 Pyromane from before, and I decided I really wanted him, so tomorrow my plan was to tame him. I also possibly wanted to get the high level female along with him so I would have a breeding pair. I started spyglassing mantis in the area, and I almost immediately found a 145 male, which was perfect. Now I needed to methodically clear the area because I couldn't have anything interrupting this tame or it would make things impossible. If anything attacked the mantis in the middle of the tame, it would reset my progress, so I couldn't have that. Now that the area was totally safe, I could start this stressful tame. I put on my ghillie suit and I landed Ragnar in a spot where I thought he would be safe. I then applied my repellent and I began to stalk the mantis. I was going in for the first feed when he aggroed on Ragnar from 50 miles away. I couldn't believe his range was that far, and I hopped back on Ragnar, then landed him on a tall rock where he'd be completely out of the way. I then used Pixie's awesome parachute feature to get back down, and I started stalking the mantis for a second time. I carefully approached and made sure I didn't get spotted. Okay, I got 1 feeding off. Sweet. So we're gonna need 3 horns to tame this guy up.
Now I just needed to keep my distance and wait until it was hungry for a second time. After a long wait, I went in for a second time and I almost got caught when it turned super sharply. Luckily, I screwed it out of the way and I got a second feeding. I was doing really well on this tame and now I had it in the bag. I got the final feed on him and I was pumped because he would be a very valuable metal gatherer. I decided the perfect name for him was Shimmer and I went home. Once I made it back to base, I quickly crafted my new palace saddle and day 42 concluded. On days 43 through 44, I wanted to tame a monster breeding pair of pyromanes, and little did I know, but Ark's glitches were about to spank me repeatedly. If done right, an imprinted pyromane would be beyond useful for running caves, so it was a must tame. I had lots of prep to do and I needed to build an entire custom trap for these guys. I already had a gate and 8 walls, so I didn't need to start from scratch, but I needed to go on a wood run with Peaches. She made this task beyond easy, and in no time I was done. This trap was going to be built on a raft that would basically have a small stone box that was submerged in the water. A magnifying glass would also be very important for this tame, so I could monitor their health, so I quickly made one. With that done, I built the raft, then made 3 foundations, 6 ceilings, and a few more walls. Once that was crafted, I repaired my flak leggings and I was completely ready. I flew to the lava biome and started to strategize how to best go about this tame. I decided to build my raft in the closest cove possible. I then started to build my trap and prepare myself for this difficult tame.
Okay, so this is the design. So we go like this. Get it like as forward as possible. Boom. 1, 2, 3. We go, how is it placed? Like, we go wall, 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 ceiling, 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 ceiling. The way it works is you first trap the pyromane in the submerged box to douse it, which is the first requirement to tame it. You then have to weaken it just below half health, which is why the magnifying glass is useful. Once it's low enough, you damage it until it does a roaring animation. This is your sign to quickly jump on its back, and you have to kill enough creatures to tame it before its timer runs out. Now that my trap was ready, I just had to lead this beast into the water. I shot it with my fabricated sniper, and unfortunately another pyromane also aggroed on me. I had no other choice but to take it down, so I slashed it with Ragnar until it croaked.
I then led the 140 to the water and the first Ark glitch hit me. He was literally standing in the water but was not getting doused. If he wasn't extinguished, I wouldn't be able to tame him, so this was a big problem. What the heck? He's literally in water, game. Game, he's literally swimming. Because of this, I had to fly away and restart my entire game. After relogging, the game decided it was going to function properly, and I got him in the box, then closed the gate which trapped him inside. I thought my worries were over, then another Ark glitch hit me just as hard. Game, are you kidding me? I moved the raft an inch and he immediately flies out of there? To say I was peeved is an understatement, and I just wanted my game to function properly. I have used this trap for every single Pyromane tame I have ever done, and I have never seen a Pyromane phase out of the trap like today. After getting him stuck for a third time, I decided I couldn't afford to move him. I started lowering his health bar and occasionally checking its health with my magnifying glass. This tame was going horribly so far, and to make things worse, he was shredding my armor. Once he was finally low enough, I shot him again until I saw the animation. I jumped on his back and immediately got to work killing creatures. With each creature I took down, it refreshed my timer, so I jumped between dinos killing them. Things were looking really good, and I thought I had it in the bag when I started taking down 2 baby parasaurs. But for some reason, killing them did not refresh my timer at all. Now I was screwed and beyond peeved because killing those creatures should have given me more time. I failed, and I'm gonna die. Oh no, dude, this is so bad. No. I managed to barely escape with my life, but now I was back to square one on this wretched tame. Before I could attempt this tame again, I needed to repair my armor and get some food. Once I made it home, I was able to only repair some of my gear, and soon I would need a metal run bad. With that done, I cooked up a bunch of food and headed back to the lava biome. On my way, I found another drop, and the Ark gods must have given me luck because of all the glitches that happened. I got an insane piece of flak legs as well as super good fur boots, and I was slightly less ticked off. Unfortunately, after making it back to the Pyromane, it wasn't there anymore because a Rex killed it. Now taming it was not even an option anymore, but at the very least, I knew where 2 other high levels were from earlier in the 100 days. Now that I confirmed their location, I moved my boat down the beach. With that done, I managed to easily trap the 140 female. I then led the male slightly away from the area so he wouldn't interfere with the tame. Once that was done, I got the Pyromane low enough with my Griffin, and as soon as I saw the animation, I jumped on her back. I flame leaped into a whole horde of small creatures, and in no time, I had enough taming percentage. This was very stressful, but I finally got one tamed. My celebration was cut extremely short though, when the dossier coming up on my screen made my game have a seizure. Oh my gosh, it's so laggy. After yet another relog, I named her Spitfire and got ready to tame the high level male. I repeated the exact same process on him, getting him into the trap, then lowering him with my Griffin. When he was ready, I climbed on his back and started killing creatures at lightning speed. Luckily for my monitor, I got him tamed, and I named this beast Crockpot to end these glitchy days. Now that I had a beastly breeding pair of Pyromanes, I wanted to get back to the saddle tames, and day 45 was dedicated to getting a Carno. I also wanted to tame a low-level female griffin so I could start breeding Ragnar and maybe the 145 male I saw in the future. To get ready for these tames, I wanted to get a huge stockpile of narcotics. Ragnar had plenty of spoiled meat in his inventory, so I didn't need to spoil anymore, and I went on a huge berry run with Big Boy. This was maybe the biggest run I had done yet, and I was about to make over 200 narcotics, which would keep me going for a while. Next, I focused on making arrows, and I got flint, then thatch, and finally fiber. I made an entire stack and waited for them to craft as well as my narcos. With that done, I was ready to go, and I set out to find a Carno. On my way, I also looted a yellow drop, which gave me an Anky saddle along with some mutton, which wasn't too shabby. Once I got to a spot where Carnos could spawn, I saw an alpha Carno, and I was tempted to kill it right away, but came up with a plan instead. Actually, we're gonna leave him. You know what? We are gonna leave this alpha Carno, and the moment we get an insane imprinted Griffin, then we're gonna come over and kill this guy for XP on that guy and save him, because that's just gonna be a ton of XP. Refocusing on my search, I found 2 Carnos, and they were both level 55. They had been the only Carnos I had seen, so I was preparing to tame them, but they were in an intense fight. I tried to help them out with Ragnar, but I did way more harm than good. I managed to kill everything but 2 vultures, and in desperation, I accidentally executed the Carno. With that annoying loss, I had to find another one, but luckily it didn't take me long, and it was a much better level. I then made a bunch of tranks and set up my classic trap. I figured it would be easier to trap this thing with my character, so that's exactly what I did. I sniped him with an arrow, then got ready for some slick maneuvers. I had him chase my character inside, and I squeezed through the gates, managing to only take one hit before getting him fully stuck. I then fed my new Carno the mutton from the drop, which tamed her almost immediately. I named her Baby Hands the Carno, picked up my trap, then set off to find a Griffin to tame. I flew towards the center waterfall, and I managed to find an improved Ceratosaur saddle, which was a cool bonus. Griffins were absolutely everywhere, and it didn't take me long to find a level 15 female. Since she was such a low level, I didn't need a trap, and I just shot her in the air. She didn't have much torpor, so I only needed to play Ring Around the Rosie with her for a short time. Before long, she started running, and I got her to plummet from the sky. She was super glitched in the rock, but I could luckily still access her inventory, and I got her tamed. I was pumped, and this would be the perfect Griffin to help me start my breeding line. As I arrived back at home, I threw out both my new tames, and the day ended. On day 46, I wanted to mate my new breeding pairs, and I wanted to knock the Megalodon saddle tame off the list. Ready myself for babies, I placed my feeding trough closer to the pairs, then dumped a boatload of meat and berries to feed my tames. I then decided to go on a quick meat run to make sure I had enough to feed them. After executing 2 parasaurs with Ragnar, the job was done. I then enabled mating on both my Pyromanes as well as my Griffins. Once the Pyromanes were done, I just had to wait for them to gestate, and when the Griffins finished, they laid an egg. I was extremely worried I would have to build air conditioners to hatch the egg, but I was stoked to find out my base was naturally the perfect temperature. I set the egg next to the Pyromanes and waited for the babies to be born. The Pyromanes popped out, and I was hyped to see they were twins. Unfortunately, my hype was short-lived when I saw they were both males and got both the worst health and melee. When the Griffin baby was born, this luck completely flipped and he got the best health, melee, and stam. I named him Bjorn right away, and I would most definitely have to imprint on him. I then made a hard decision. Since the Pyromanes had the worst stats and were males, so they couldn't give me another breeding chance, they had to be taken out back. I would want the good health on them if I kept them, so we're gonna take these guys out back. And they're gonna be dealt with. I felt like a monster, but it had to be done, and I unclaimed them, then with one fell swoop from Ragnar, they were gone. Next, I had to wait until Bjorn was ready for an imprint. I was very lucky when he asked for a Mejoberry, which was an easy request. I was super pumped to get 100% imprinting on him, and I knew Bjorn might be my new main Griffin in the future. With my breeding done for the day, I went out to tame a Megalodon. I crowd up Lady Killer Croc, grabbed my scuba, then I was ready to go. I landed on the raft as per usual and slipped into the water with my Croc. There were sharks everywhere, and the literal second shark I spotted was a 130. This was perfect, and my plan to knock her out was to shoot her, then draw her inland where it would be a much safer tame. I also quickly killed a level 20 shark for food and put on my scuba because I started drowning. Lady Killer Croc was miles faster than the shark, and it made this tame easy. I could shoot her and outswim her without breaking a sweat. Even with a couple of her shark friends joining the fight, it didn't complicate things at all. After shooting her a bunch, she finally went down, and I killed both of her companions to make sure she would be safe once tamed. I then waited patiently, and once she was mine, I named her Maggie the Meg. I then decided to leave my Sarco on the boat so she would readily be available for future water tames, and day 46 ended. Days 47 through 49 were insanely productive, and I knocked out tames like no other. My initial plan for the day was to tame a breeding pair of bisons as well as the 145 Griffin I saw the other day. To prepare myself, I repaired my crossbow, then crafted myself a ton of arrows. Next, I grabbed sweet veggie cakes from my fridge because for some reason I thought the bison needed them as taming food. Once that was done, I set out. Okay, I actually just checked the saddle list and I just saved myself from almost taming something out of order again. But if you look down here, scroll, I actually need to tame a Baryonyx first before I can get the bison. So if you look, yeah, we got Baryonyx between the Megalodon, which I almost accidentally skipped, and here we are at the bison. After catching myself before that mistake, I decided to add taming a Baryonyx to my list of things to do for these days. I wasted no time diving into the swamp, and not even kidding, the first berry I saw was a 135. There was absolutely no reason to keep looking, so I started the tame. While shooting him on the back of my Griffin, getting stunned off was not an issue. It made this tame extremely easy, and I just hovered over the top of him and waited for him to run into my shots. Like I said, this tame was an absolute breeze, and before long he started to run away. I chased him down, and after missing some embarrassing shots, I got him knocked out. The Baryonyx required fish meat to tame, and instead of hunting for some, I knew Lady Killer Croc had some in her inventory. So I made a quick pit stop at my old raft and grabbed 2 stacks. I then fed Barry, and it wasn't long before I crossed the tame off the list. I named the berry Bart, and I set off to the plains by Green Op to scout for bison. It didn't take me long to find some, and I found a level 60 as well as a level 20. These were very low levels, but they could be a good breeding partner if I found a high level male. I scouted the rest of the plains, and there was not a high level in sight. So my plan was to tame the level 20 female, and hopefully I could find a good male in the other plains by the Wyvern Trench. I made some tranks, and I haphazardly shot it. Oh, it dismounted me. Oh, what the heck? Okay, be careful, I guess it could dismount you. I panicked for a second, and luckily it was such a low level, or I could have been in some trouble. It didn't take me long to knock it out, and I killed the other one who tried to come to its defense. I then dumped 2 sweet veggie cakes in its inventory, and I quickly realized it tamed with berries. I was hyped to not have to waste my veggie cakes, and after eating some Megos, she tamed. I named her Brianna the Bison, and I again had to relog because the dossier broke my game. With that done, it was time to tame the 145 Griffin before I went to the other plains. I found him in no time, and I was going to set up my trap up top, but when I saw a Kartra, that was a big no-no. So I set up my trap down the hill from it. My plan was to lead it in with my player because it was so easy with the Carno tame. So I shot the Griffin and bolted towards my trap with it hot on my trail. This time I messed up the distance and ran inside the trap too late, which caused the Griffin to miss. To make things worse, Ragnar was getting attacked by a bunch of raptors. I ran towards him to save him, only to have the entire pack start chasing me immediately. I ran for my life, and I was able to take care of them after getting back on Ragnar. After refocusing, I went back to resume the tame, only to find out the Kartra had moved way too close to my trap. So I picked up the entire thing and placed it much farther back. I then got its attention for a second time, and I misjudged the distance like crazy. I took a boatload of hits while running, but I got the job done.
He's tearing me apart. Okay, perfect, he's trapped. Perfect, we did it. Great.
Now that it was trapped, I started to trank him, and I made sure to be hyper aware of his health. I wanted to make sure he wouldn't die before knocking out because I had PTSD from the Dire Bear tame. Even with my insane crossbow, I had to shoot a ton of arrows. But I managed to get this beast of a Griffin down. I killed a Stego for prime meat, fed it to him, and waited for him to tame. When he was mine, I named him Gruff the Griffin, and every single important stat was higher than Ragnar's, so he would be our new breeder. Now, all that was left for these days was to find a high-level male bison to tame. The first group I found was no good, but the second had a 140 male, which was perfect. This time, I set up my gate trap since he would have a considerable amount for mid-tame, and he absolutely rocked me into next month. He broke several pieces of my armor, making a metal run in the next day an essential. I also had to deal with killing the female that was in his herd, which came to his defense. Once she was gone, I got back to work and I knocked out the beast. I picked a bunch of bushes for him, and after a short wait, he was mine. I decided the perfect name for him was Basher, and these incredibly successful days ended. When the sun rose on day 50, my plan was to go on a much needed metal run, tame a Thyla, and do some breeding. I wasted no time flying to the metal cave, and I loaded up on 300 metal, which was Ragnar's max. I then brought it up to my base and hauled it to the forge. I wanted to get a bit more though, so I went back for a second round and got another 300. After loading that into the forge, I got wood from Peaches and got them smelting. With my first task done, I needed to fly to the outskirts of the desert to find a Thyla. On my way, I saw a yellow and a red drop, and you already know I needed them. The yellow one was mediocre, and the best thing it had was pistol ammo. When I got to the red drop, it was very dangerous.
Oh, and it's right next to an ice wyvern too. Multiple. Okay, this is gonna be risky. Risk it for the biscuit, baby. Risk it for the biscuit, baby. It was not worth it for the biscuit.
This drop was also not exciting, and I continued to the far side of the desert. When I got there, I wanted to tame one of the lowest levels I could find. This is because I didn't really have a use for a Thyla, and I didn't want to waste a bunch of tranks on such a high torpor tame. The first two I found were decently high levels, so I kept searching for an easier option. I found a level 15, which was perfect, and it was time to clear the incredibly dangerous area. The amount of creatures nearby was genuinely ridiculous, and it took me swoop after swoop just to get the job done. I would always think the job was done, and I would look down just to see another 5 creatures. Finally, I was ready for the tame, and I positioned myself to hover over the top of it and have it run into my crosshair. This lasted for a while, and for such a low level, it was tanking tranks. Once it was down, I gave it a ton of prime since I had a bunch from clearing the area. When he tamed, I named him Tyler the Thyla, and I put him into a cryo. Once I made it back to base, I tried to breed my griffins, but they were still on cooldown, so I couldn't. I then mated my new bisons, and I also tried to mate my pyramanes, who were also still on cooldown. Once the bisons were done, I waited for them to gestate, and the baby was born. Unfortunately for the baby, he was a male and had all the bad stats. I think you guys know exactly where this is going, and to end the day, I had to take him out back.
I'm sorry, little one. You know, today just wasn't your day.
On days 51 through 53, it was finally time to brave the wyvern trench and to get every kind of egg. This was a really big day, and it would also be a very dangerous one. To prepare, I repaired as much flak as possible. Next, I wanted to make a bed so I could set up a place to respawn if I died while in the trench. I grabbed some thatch, which allowed me to make a bed, a storage box, and a foundation. Finally, I grabbed Bjorn and a cryo and came up with a plan in case things went wrong. There were many situations where my player could die in the trench and Ragnar would be left without me. So I wanted to have a bed nearby with a storage box that would hold Bjorn. This was so I could immediately have another griffin to go on a rescue mission for Ragnar if I needed to. With a plan set, I went to the wyvern trench in the lava biome. I landed on a safe grassy pillar and placed down my whole setup. I then dumped Bjorn and all my heavy gear into the chest so it wouldn't weigh down Ragnar. I also decided to leave Pixie since there was no reason to risk her life in this mission. Now I was ready to go, but for some reason the wyverns weren't spawning an egg, so I would have to wait nearby for them to lay them. While I was waiting, I also got a top tier red drop which had a nuts assault rifle which could definitely be useful in the boss fight. With my waiting done, I flew over the trench and strategized which eggs I wanted to go for. Oh my gosh! This could be Ragnar's death very easily here, which should suck. My plan was to steal 3 eggs total and 1 of each kind of wyvern. While scouting, I saw a fire wyvern egg that was one of the highest nests possible. This would be the safest for me to grab because the least amount of wyverns were near it. I then got full stamina, clenched my cheeks, and got ready for this suicide mission. I dove down and landed in the nest and grabbed the unfortunately low level egg. With no time to waste, I flew for my life and I could hear the wyverns fire breathing right behind me. Holy cow. We gotta lead him away.
Oh my gosh. There's so many.
That first egg grab went about as smooth as I could ask for, and I prepared myself for another venture into the dangerous nest. I went to the opposite side of the trench and I was hopeful there would be an easy egg to grab. I managed to spot a lightning wyvern egg close to the surface, and oh boy did I want it. The only problem was this spot in the trench was a much harder area and it would be miles more difficult to maneuver once inside. I dove at max speed towards the trench and I intended to go all the way to the egg, but I accidentally slammed into a fire wyvern. So I aborted the mission and I figured it was probably for the best to lead as many wyverns away as possible. So I hit a bunch of them to get their attention and dodge their vicious breath attacks. After flying away from the trench and out of render, I was safe to give it another shot. I was hopeful that it would be much easier to grab the egg now that I had led so many away. I made a dive into the trench and I accidentally misjudged my trajectory, which caused me to land off to the side of the nest. I was going to hop off Ragnar to grab it anyway, but I heard a poison wyvern, which was the most dangerous one. If I got hit by a direct poison ball, it would be guaranteed death, so I dipped out as fast as possible. This time I did not come out unscathed and Ragnar got ripped to shreds by the encounter. But I was still alive and even more wyverns had been led away from the trench. I rested for stamina yet again and now I was determined to get the egg for real. I dove again and this time I managed to perfectly aim Ragnar to land directly on the nest. Because of this, I had no trouble grabbing the egg, and now I just had to make it out alive. The encounter that followed will have long-lasting negative effects on my poor heart because of the amount of breath attacks I barely dodged. I dodged tons of fire and barely got hit by a burst of lightning before skirting out of range. I had just barely survived that encounter just to see an alpha wyvern chasing me, and I booked it for the hills. Once I was finally safe, I looked at the level of the egg only to see that all that work was for a level 50. Now I had 2 out of the 3 wyvern types in the trench, and I just needed to get a poison egg before I left. I spotted a green egg, which is what I was looking for, and I got ready. This egg was by far the deepest in the trench compared to all the other eggs I grabbed. This would be very dangerous, and I would be lucky to make it out alive. I dove for the egg, and I was praying I'd survive this mission. Oh shoot. Alright, go, 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 go. Go, go, go. Go, go, go. Go, Ragnar, go. Your life's on the line, buddy. Your life is on the line. I'm like actually pooping my pants over here badly. I have a large turd in my pants. I managed to narrowly escape, and now I had all 3 types, so my adventure was over. I was also stoked to see the poison egg was a level 150, which was not shabby at all. I then grabbed my gear and Pixie, then flew back towards my base. On my way, I remembered that ice wyverns were a thing, and I also needed to steal one of their eggs. Before I did this, I loaded all my wyvern eggs into the preserving bin since they were weighing me down a ton. With that done, I went to the ice wyvern nest I had seen earlier in the 100 days. Since there were only 2 wyverns, this made it entirely possible to kill the parents, which would leave the egg defenseless. I got straight to work killing the ice wyvern, and I had to be extremely careful not to get hit with its breath attack because it would slow me down. I was doing great work, and I did accidentally get hit by it, but I still managed to outfly it even with the slowing effect. After taking it down, I made quick work of the second parent, and I stole the egg. It was a level 55, which was not exciting, and I went to steal from another nest on the same mountain. I made quick work of the parents, and I was very upset to find out the egg was trash. With that trash egg, I was very unsatisfied and went to get one final nest. I saw that there was a 185 wyvern, and I was praying it would be the parent. My plan was to kill the other low level wyvern and steal the egg, hoping it was the high level one. But if not, I'd leave the high level wyvern alive, and hopefully one day it would lay a good egg. This ended up being a huge mistake, and as I went to grab the egg, the wyvern knocked Ragnar off of the pillar, and I was in serious trouble. I tried to get back on Ragnar, but I got ice breath by the wyvern, which slowed me down a ton. To make things worse, a ton of creatures aggroed on me, and I knew I was cooked. I tried to run for my life, but my armor broke, and I had my first death of the challenge. This sucked really bad, and the worst part was the egg wasn't even the good level. But my focus was on saving Ragnar, so I hopped on Gruff to go on a rescue mission. I somehow managed to save Ragnar in the nick of time from impeding doom. But I didn't realize Pixie was still in the fray, and I lost my prized shoulder pet. After that gut-wrenching loss, I managed to get my stuff, and I returned home to hatch my new wyverns. Before I could raise them, I needed bison milk, so I bred my guys, and they had another female, which was sweet. I managed to get 2 bison milk from the first breeding, and after waiting for the new female to grow, I did another breeding. This allowed me to get 4 milk total for each one of my wyverns. I then crafted a boatload of standing torches and got ready to hatch my new dragons. One by one, I got all 4 types hatched, which knocked them all off the taming list. I then named each of my new dragons, and I started with the ice wyvern, which I named Draugr. I then named my lightning wyvern Havoc, my fire wyvern Smolder, and my poison wyvern Skull. With that done, I waited to imprint on them, and every single one of them asked for a walk. Once the first wave of imprinting was done, I fed them the bison milk, which was their required food, and I waited for the last imprint. They again all asked to walk, and I got full imprinting on all my new wyverns to end these stressful days. On day 54, I wanted to get the next saddle tame, the Megatherium, but before that, I needed to go on a fat metal run. I checked all 3 low-level wyverns to see which one had the highest weight. It ended up being Draugr, so he would be my designated new weight wyvern. This would mean I would be only pumping weight on him, and he would help me to do a bunch of harvesting. I used him to pick up Shimmer, and I headed off to the metal cave. When I got there, I used his sea attack to knock down a bunch of trees, which gave me a few levels to pump it to weight. With that done, I equipped Shimmer with my pickaxe, then started harvesting. The mantis got a stupid amount of metal per node, and it took literally seconds before being overweight. I then flew Shimmer back to base, and I decided to open up my forge area to the outside. This would make it so I would have easy access to my forges and make metal runs a lot easier. With one run done, I decided I wanted to go on another one since I would need a ton of metal to repair my good black armor. This time, I decided to go to the snow mountain, which worked out a lot better since it was easy to land next to the nodes. After loading up the forges, I grabbed a bunch of wood from Peaches and I was able to get them lit. With that big task done, I needed to prepare for the Megatherium tame. First, I grabbed a bunch more wood from my Pyromane, and next I needed to repair my crossbow. To do this, I needed to wait for some metal and I needed to grab some more fiber. Once that was done, I repaired my crossbow as well as my gauntlets. Now I was ready to go, so I set off to the redwood biome to find a Megatherium. On my way, I also spotted a red drop in the murder snow, and just as I got close, it of course despawned in front of my face. After that disappointment, I made it to the redwoods and I started to scout. The first one I found was a pretty trash level, but the second was definitely worth taming. I wasted no time setting up my trap, and my plan was to trap the hairy beast with my character. It was incredibly foggy in the forest and I had to quickly re-find it before I was ready. I shot her and I dragged her towards my trap. Come on in, angry sloth. Okay, she's in, close. Okay, beautiful. Easy dubs, easy dubs. Okay, that was a great trap there on that guy. She didn't even hit me once. With that, the hard part was over and I tranked her until she downed. I picked some berries for her and got her tamed, then fittingly named her Sasquatch. After making it back to base, I threw out my new tame and I wanted to repair my armor before the day ended. So I repaired as much as I could with the newly smelted metal and the day ended. On day 55, my only goal was to tame a rhino, and little did I know, but it was going to be a rough Ark day. I needed narcotics for this tame and I was fresh out of spoiled meat, so I got a bunch of meat spoiling in my inventory. Then as per usual, I hopped on Big Boy and started going to town on some bushes. As I was harvesting, I was still broken up about Pixie's death. Man, I still can't believe we lost Pixie. That's just a gut-wrenching loss. Low-key, she was one of my favorite tames of this 100 days. Pixie was sweet. She had her awesome parachute ability. Oh, I'm really sad about that. I'm really sad about that. Once I was done harvesting berries, I grinded up a boatload of narcotics. Finally, I needed some more arrows, then I'd be ready to go. So I got a bunch of flint and thatch, then with the fiber from the smithy, I made a full stack. After waiting for everything to craft, I was ready to set out on my tame. I started scouting the snowy mountain and I quickly realized I forgot my fur, which would be a big issue. But for the time being, I had plenty of health, so I kept looking for rhinos. It was apparent that their population was suffering after I slaughtered them for the mantis tame because I couldn't find any. Luckily, the first rhino I spotted was a 145, which was amazing, and I made the classic mistake of not clearing the area. I set up my trap and was prepping to lead him inside when literally everyone and their grandma went to attack the rhino. Oh wait, this is not good. Holy Daedon herd. I flew over to save the rhino as fast as I could, but with so many creatures, there was nothing I could do and I tragically lost him. This was the first of many tragic events on this day. I picked up my trap and I went home to grab my fur before I scouted for another rhino. With that done, I realized I hadn't scouted the tundra lip below the mountain. So that's where I went, and I was pumped to find a 135, which made me feel a lot better about losing the other one. This time, I made sure to clear the area right away, and later I would find out I did not do a thorough job. I set up my trap for a second time and I got ready to lead the rhino in with my player. As she went in the trap, she absolutely rocked me and I panicked when I built the trap incorrectly. I couldn't get out for a second, but I managed to squeeze my way out and she was trapped. I thought this tame was in the bag and I started tranking her. That's when chaos erupted and things went completely south. The rhino attacked a Veilwind at the same time as an Argent attacked me that had been nowhere in sight. Now I was getting destroyed by the bird, and while I was preoccupied, the Veilwind was shredding the rhino. I managed to kill the Argent and I got back to the trap to save my rhino. But the little rat was going in and out of its portals, so I couldn't see it for longer than a second. I thought I got them all, only to see another one pop up and execute the rhino. He's still attacking her. Oh my brother. You kidding me, you little weasel? This day is not my day. This hasn't been my day at all. At this point, I was very triggered and I went to scout for another rhino. I found a level 60 and I did not care in the slightest about its level, so I started shooting it. I didn't bother with a trap, and luckily since it was a low level, it went down. I then fed it some berries and finally completed this stupid tame. I named the rhino Don't Even Want, and day 55 ended. I had 3 goals for day 56, and that was to do some breeding, tame an Arthropleura, and craft a gene scanner. I enabled mating on my pyromanes as well as my griffins, and once they were done, I needed to wait for the babies to be born. I grabbed some meat off Ragnar, and I realized the griffin egg was too hot since it was daytime. So I whistled follow on Darren because his ability applies some temperature control and the egg started to hatch. In the meantime, my pyromane was born, and unfortunately it got the bad stats, but it was another female. So she was worth keeping alive, and I went to the griffin egg to watch it hatch. The griffin had horrible stats and was a male, so he had to go. With that done, my plan was to go on a harvesting / taming mission. For the gene scanner, I needed crystal, polymer, and black pearls. But before I set out, I got everything I needed for the Arthro tame. So I grabbed my ghillie suit as well as some bug repellent. I then flew with Ragnar to get Lady Killer Croc because I needed help to kill the water scorpions that drop black pearls. These guys spawn in Viking Bay, so I flew there, and on my way I made a quick pit stop to get some crystal. Once I made it to the bay, I threw out Lady Killer Croc and dove into the water. I quickly found the scorpions, and it was surprisingly easy to get all the pearls I needed. With that done, I set out to the lava biome to find an Arthro and kill a mantis for Polly while I was there. The literal first Arthro I found was a level 20, and the area was honestly very safe. I killed the only creatures that were close by with Ragnar, which included a mantis. This fulfilled my requirement for polymer, and I got ready for the tame. I put on my ghillie, put spoiled meat in my hotbar, then applied bug repellent. Now I needed to stalk the creepy centipede and be very careful not to get its attention. In my opinion, this is the hardest passive tame because the feeding location is in the middle of its body, which makes you far more likely to get caught. Luckily, I managed to get it done in one feeding, and I named my new pal Wormy. Now I just needed to go home and make a gene scanner to end the day. But when I went to take off, Ragnar was super fat and I needed to drop the crystal to be able to fly. Once I made it back to base, I made a super slow walk to the fabricator. This isn't because I can barely carry what's in my inventory, this is just because I have so much aura recently that, you know, I just gotta bask in the moment. After pooling all of my resources into the fabricator, I of course didn't have enough crystal in the base to get the job done. So I quickly set off to the snow mountain and got some. With that done, to end the day, I made the incredibly powerful tool which would help me track dinos in the future. When day 57 began, I had a plan to knock 2 saddle tames off of my list, and I wanted to get a Tapejara as well as a Xiphactinus. I was pretty much ready for the Tapejara tame, but I grabbed some rare flowers since they were a passive flea creature. This means it would naturally run away from me, and I wanted to have an easy way to keep it from escaping by using rare flowers. With that, I was ready to go, and I set out towards the jungle area where they can spawn. On my way, I also spotted a nice yellow beacon, and my flak armor radar was going off. Ooh, yellow ring drop. That could mean new flak for me. New flak, new flak, new flak. New flag, baby, new flag, new flag. As you can tell, I was extremely excited about this new armor, and I got a much better flak chest piece which had insane durability. I also got a blueprint for much better flak gauntlets, which was surprisingly dirt cheap to craft. With that great start to the day, I continued into the jungle and I wanted to try out my new gene scanner. At first, I didn't get any hits, but after flying a bit farther, it locked on, and funny enough, I was literally right over the top of one. Since it was landed, I figured I could sneak up on it and land a bola without using rare flowers. So I quickly flew down, and as expected, I got the bola off before she could fly away. She was a super low level, so she went down after one trank. Now I just needed some prime meat, so I slaughtered a Diplo and got this extremely easy tame over with. We're gonna name her Hippie Toe the Tapejara. Okay, that's so dumb. So dumb. Now that I was done with one tame, I just needed to prepare for an underwater adventure. But before I went back to base, I got distracted by another drop. This drop was also insane, and the highlight was definitely the Mastercraft scuba tank, which would make long underwater adventures no big deal. After making it back to base, I crafted up my new gauntlets BP, grabbed all my scuba gear, and set out to the ocean. I slid into the water with my croc, and using my gene scanner, it didn't take long at all to track one down. There ended up being 2 of them, but they were both pretty low levels. This wouldn't be an issue though, because my Sarco would be a better water tame than them anyway, so I went for it.
I set up my gate trap and I was hopeful it would work just as well underwater. I shot them to get their attention and I led them towards my gate. One swam in right away and I closed the first gate behind me. I bolted around to get the second and tragedy struck. In the second that I was off on my Sarco, it managed to grab me in its mouth and I was completely stuck. To make things worse, it seemed like the Xiphactinus was glitched out, not moving, and I was stuck in place. Then its buddies started chomping on me and I knew I was done for. It seemed like another glitch was responsible for my death and now I had to recover my gear with no water tame. I decided my best option was to fly there on Bjorn and try to whistle my Sarco to the surface. On my flight there, this encounter reminded me why I hated the water so much. Once I got there, I dove into the water and I quickly swam down as fast as possible. I spammed the follow whistle button on my way down and somehow I managed to get her to listen. Now I was back on my Sarco, so recovering my gear was easy and I managed to get everything back. I picked up my trap and Bjorn, then hunted for a while until I found another group of Xiphactinus. These guys were a much higher level and as expected, they were a huge pain to trap, but I got it done. No, don't get off, don't get off. Is he inside or is he... No, he's outside. I'm gonna wait for him to come in here. Come in here. Okay, that's the key to our success right here. We're gonna bring him in here. And then we gotta somehow get the gate closed. No, don't. Oh. Okay, we got one trapped, but I'm trapped in there with it. No. Okay, they're out. This is really tough. Okay, I closed the gate. One's trapped. Yes! I got him trapped. I'm a freaking legend. Now the super hard part was over and I ended up trapping the 145, which was amazing. I tranked him until he went down and I fed him some regular fish meat until he tamed. I named this stupid fish Flipper, which ended the day, and I was beyond happy this super stressful tame was over. On day 58, I wanted to knock yet another 2 saddle tames off the list. These were the Megaloceros and the Daeodon. I started prepping right away and I grabbed extra narcotics, then repaired as much of my armor as possible. I also needed to repair my crossbow, so I grabbed fiber and wood, then fixed it. The final thing I wanted to do to prepare for the Daeodon tame specifically was make an at-home trap. Now that I had wyverns, a new taming strategy was open to me. The wyverns were big enough to pick up a lot of different creatures and I would be able to tame them in my trap at base. So I farmed up some wood and stone, then built a large trap. I used pillars and doorways to make a big box that would still be easy to shoot through but not have big enough gaps that they could squeeze through. This would come in clutch for the Daeodon tame, but first I needed to tame a Megaloceros which lived deep in caves. So I couldn't use my wyverns and I needed a good mount that could survive the dangers I would face. I decided to use Spitfire and she would be my go-to pyromane until I got a good imprinted one. I flew to the dark cave near Viking Bay and I ran in headfirst into unknown territory. My gene scanner also got an immediate hit, so I knew Megs were very close by. After a quick search, the literal first one I spotted was a 145, which was beyond perfect. I crafted more tranks and I killed the lower level Meg that was also in the area, which happened to give me prime meat, which was perfect. I then started tranking this super slow dino. Since it was daytime, the Meg was in sleep debt, which causes it to run at a snail's pace. This made the tame beyond easy and she quickly knocked. I gave her the prime meat from her friend and she was mine in no time. I gave her the amazing name of Nappy and I went up to the snow mountain to find a Daeodon. Unfortunately, the one time I wanted to see a high level Daeodon, they were nowhere to be found. Here's a piggy. Where are you, piggy? Level 20 piggy. We could do better. The best one I could find was a level 50 and I picked it up, then easily dropped it in my trap at base. This made the tame beyond easy and I wouldn't have to deal with any other tames getting in the way. Before long, she was out and I gave her some prime meat to tame her. I named her Dumper the Daeodon and this successful day ended. Unfortunately, on day 59, it was time for another water adventure to tame a Basilosaurus. I didn't have to do much prep for this tame and the hardest part of this tame was going to be finding one. I grabbed my scuba gear, then killed an Argent to get prime meat, which would be effective taming food for this whale. I then hopped on Ladykiller Croc and swam around the swamp biome periodically using my gene scanner. These guys must be extremely rare because even with the scanner I was getting no hits.
Finally, I got a hit and I quickly tracked it, and it was a level 95, which wasn't bad at all. Now, I just needed to kill the numerous amount of mantas that were following it around. There were a ton of these guys, and they were doing considerable damage to my Sarco. I just kept swimming around in a circle and chomping until they started dropping like flies. Once they were all down, the hard part was over, and I just needed to passively feed this guy till he tamed. I went for one feed and I almost got eaten. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Killer croc, killer croc, killer croc, killer croc. Come here. Okay, that Megalodon, man, I low-key pooped my pants. I can't even lie. After that small hitch in my plan, I had to wait a surprisingly long time for him to get hungry. But after 2 more feedings, I knocked another tame off my list. I decided to name him Big Belly, and I went back to base to do some breeding because I still had some time left. I bred up all my pyramanes, and I also bred my griffins. With that done, I grabbed food off of Ragnar and I waited for my babies to be born. I was beyond hyped when one of my pyramanes got good stats, and he would be a beast if I could imprint on him. I named him Ignis, and I claimed the griffin only to see it was a bad level. You little pooper. I waited to imprint on Ignis, and I was super upset when he asked for a kibble I didn't have. So I removed his name, and the day ended, and I would have to try again in the future to get an imprinted pyromane. On day 60, I wanted to quickly knock an annoying tame off the list, and that was the Ceratosaurus. I needed to make a hemoglobin cocktail for this tame, and I needed more spines for this and some blood packs. So I made a blood syringe which would allow me to extract my blood, and I set off to find a Ceratosaurus. The first one I found was a level 15, which was perfect and would be a great candidate to tame. The way this tame works is once you have a cocktail, you feed it to a tanky dino and let the Ceratosaurus bite it until it becomes fully drunk. Then you can passive feed it until it's tamed, but the catch is the higher the level, the more cocktails you will need. Since these guys were super rare, it would be very difficult for me to craft more than one, so a low level was essential. With that, I continued my search, and it took me literally almost the entire day to find the Ceratosaurs I needed. But I managed to find several of them in the desert. I killed them all one by one and collected spine after spine until I finally had enough. On my way home, I also looted a yellow drop which had a killer Dinosutra saddle, which was cool. After making it home, I decided to use Peaches for this tame since she had the most HP and had a really good saddle. I then set off with Skull because I wanted to bring the Cerata back to my base to make the tame easy, but unfortunately it was too big to pick up. So I cryoed Peaches and extracted enough blood to make the cocktail. With that done, I threw out Peaches by the Cerata and I consumed the cocktail when it got close. I let it bite me a ton, and after a while of chomping away, it was fully drunk. With that done, I grabbed some prime meat and she tamed in one feed, which was hype. For some reason, I named her Gizzard, and day 60 concluded. When day 61 began, I had plans to knock another 2 saddle tames off the list, and those were the Dire Bear and Beaver. I was completely ready for these tames, and I was planning on taking full advantage of having a wyvern. My plan was to pick up both of these tames and drop them in my trap at base. This would make both tames a breeze, and it would make it so wild creatures couldn't interfere. So with that in mind, I set out to find a direwolf first. So let us see. Any dire wolves for me? The first pack I found was Dookie, and before I scouted for any more, I decided to make a quick pit stop at a yellow drop. Unfortunately, the drop was probably the worst one I have gotten yet, and I got back to searching. Right after that disappointment, I found a 140 wolf, but it was almost dead fighting a mammoth. I tried to save it, but I couldn't pick it up for the life of me. They were fighting in a tree, and with the horrible turning radius of the dragon, the wolf ended up dying. So I continued my search, and I found a huge pack of them. I saw a level 90 in the pack, which was good enough for me, so I went to grab it, and I picked up something unexpected instead. 135. Oh, I didn't even see this one. Okay, perfect. We got a 135 male. I didn't even see that one. I thought the 90 was the highest. Okay, perfect. I shuttled the direwolf back to my base, and I easily dumped it inside my trap. I then pumped the wolf with arrows, and I was thinking to myself that this tame couldn't have been easier. Before long, he went down, and I decided to be as efficient as possible and to let him starve while I found a beaver to tame. I flew to the small lake that was infested with them, and I started rapidly spyglassing. It didn't take long at all to spot a 135, and I picked him up to bring him home. I dropped him in the trap with the sleeping wolf, and I went out on Ragnar to grab some prime to finish the first tame. I executed a Carno, and I tamed up Doug the direwolf. I quickly freed him, and I rebuilt the trap before the beaver could escape.
With one easy tame done, I tranked the other one until it was asleep. I gave him some mejo berries, and once he was mine, I gave him the perfect name of Chucky. To end the day, I decided to breed my pyramids yet again in hopes of getting one with the stats I wanted. When the babies were born, I got twins, and unfortunately they didn't have the stats I wanted. But they were both females, so I kept them alive for future breeding, and day 61 concluded. Day 62 was another double tame day, and I wanted to get a Veilwind tamed as well as an Argent. I grabbed my ghillie suit to prepare, and I was ready for both tames. I used my gene scanner to track a Veilwind, and I headed off towards the snow mountain. When I finally found one, it was a level 85, which was good enough for me. There is no actual taming process for this tame, and you just have to sneak up on it to claim it. So I equipped my ghillie suit, and I got my new little buddy.
We're gonna name this guy Skippy. Okay, so we got Skippy. Sweet. Oh, you are cute, aren't you?
With that easy tame done, I loaded up Skippy into a cryopod and I went to find an Argent to tame. I flew down the mountain and the literal first one I found was a level 100. This was the perfect level because it was still pretty strong and the meager amount of tranks I had left would still be enough to down it. Before I started the tame, I made sure to take down his friend that was nearby so it wouldn't get in the way. With that done, I shot the bird and started doing my best to dodge it. Normally an Argent tame is kind of difficult because you can only shoot them for so long before they run away. But I knew that with the Griffin, this wouldn't be an issue and I would be able to chase it easily. While using the Griffin, it was also easy to get arrows off while still in the air, and my maneuverability was 10 times better than the bird. Before long, the Argent began to run and I easily chased it down until it plummeted from the sky. I gave the bird some prime meat and before long he tamed, knocking yet another saddle tame off the list. My creative genius was seriously lacking on this day and I decided to name him Big Flapper. After making it back to base, I threw out both of my new tames, then equipped Big Flapper with my insane Argent saddle to end the day. My plan for day 63 was to tame a Bronto and I wanted to combine it with the Compy tame. I was basically completely out of narcotics, so I needed to grind a bunch before I was ready. I had a bunch of spoiled meat already in Ragnar's inventory, so I just needed to put Big Boy to use. He was as helpful as always, and after harvesting a bunch of bushes around base, I was able to make a good amount. I was also out of arrows, so I continued my normal routine of getting flint, thatch, and a bunch of fiber. I was done in a jiffy and I made a full stack. After waiting for everything to craft, I grabbed my narcotics and set out. This was going to be an extremely easy tame since I was just going to hover over its back and shoot down on it. It literally wouldn't be able to do anything to me and it couldn't run away. On my way to find one, I spotted a level 95 Quetzal, which was a pretty good find. And I figured he might be my target when I could actually finally tame one. The first Brontos I spotted were ridiculously high levels and I figured it would be a big waste to bring down such a high torpor creature. I don't really even know if I want like a super high level one of these guys, and that's going to take so many of my trank arrows to take it down. Let's see, how much torpor does this level 100 have? Got 13,000 torpor still at level 100. I mean, I feel like it's just a waste of tranks, no? Since I didn't have use for a Bronto and I couldn't bring it into the boss fight, I didn't want to pump 100 arrows into a high level for no reason. So when I found a level 25, it was perfect and I started to down it. Even for such a low level, it proved my point by tanking a ton of arrows before it crashed down. I fed it some berries and after a short wait, I knocked this behemoth off the list. I named her the Lone Dinosaur and I hope some of you guys get the reference. I know it's a female, but just pretend it's a male, and for all you Land Before Time fans, this one goes out to you. With one tame done, it was time to tame a copy, so I killed a Bronto for prime meat and I used my scanner to track down a pack of them. I knocked out the first one that tried to attack me and I tormented him by slaughtering his friends in front of him. I then gave him prime meat and when he tamed, I named him Speedy Boy. Once I made it back to base, I wanted to do some breeding, but I had to give some attention to my best friend first. Give him a nice little kiss. Mwah. Give him a pet too. Yeah, buddy. After refocusing, I bred as many pyramanes as I could and I had actually rotten luck. The first two babies didn't transfer stats, so they had to be executed. I was super stoked when the third baby got the stats and I thought I had finally had a main pyramane to use. But yet again, I couldn't fulfill the imprint requirement and day 63 ended with me throwing my monitor out the window. As day 64 began, I reluctantly prepped myself for another water adventure, and I was praying to the Ark gods they would make it a smooth one. It was time to tame a Plesiosaur, and while I was down there, I wanted to tame an eel. I also realized I might have made a mistake. I forgot that the Archelon saddle is in here, but I also looked around, and for some I haven't seen any of these guys spawning across my map, and I looked on Reddit, and there seems to be an issue where there's no Archelon spawning on Ragnarok, so we're ended up skipping that. So if you guys are wondering about that, it's not working on my map and they're not spawning in, so we're skipping that for that reason. Once I refocused, I needed to prepare for the tames, and for the eel tame I needed to use my Basilosaurus, so I made a saddle. I also grabbed all my scuba gear and repaired my broken scuba goggles. With that, I was ready, and I went to grab Lady Killer Croc so I could bring her to the blue obelisk area where I knew plesiosaurs had a good chance to spawn. After making it there, I threw her out and I dove right in. I equipped all my scuba gear and I tried to track down a plesiosaurus right away, but there wasn't one close enough. I dove farther into the depths, and when I made it down there, I saw a giant squid, which was incredibly scary. If I got grabbed by him, I would be cooked, so I had to be extremely careful. I continued on my adventure and I was able to get a lock on a plesiosaur as well as track it down. I was hyped to see it was a 140 and there was no reason to not tame him. There was also a second one nearby, which would definitely complicate things, especially since it was a similar color. But I got ready for the tame and I came up with a strategy. Plesiosaurs can only swim to a certain height before the game won't allow them to come up anymore. So my plan was to shoot it right at this height limit, and in theory it would never be able to swim up high enough to hit me. Tranking the slow-moving danger noodle was super easy, and even without using the height limit, I could easily outmaneuver it. I pumped it with arrow after arrow, and the tame was going well, but I had one big concern. I forgot to repair my crossbow before coming on the tame, and it was super close to breaking. If it broke before it went down, this would be a failed tame, so I just crossed my fingers that wouldn't happen. This came down to the absolute wire, and I watched my durability tick all the way down. When it finally went down, I was beyond relieved, and I could not have cut it closer. Yes, it's down, yes! Oh, that was such a close call. Oh my gosh, I literally have zero durability. I had one shot left in my crossbow when it went down. Oh my gosh, I could not have cut it closer. With that done, I cleared the area and killed 2 sharks to get some fish meat. I then fed it to him and waited for a long time for him to tame. I gave him the genius name of Nessie, and I got ready to tame an eel. To do this, I needed my Basilosaurus, which wasn't affected by their shocking. So I threw him out and then saddled him up. I then tracked down a pack of eels and I got ready to kill all but one of them. I went ham on them, and since I couldn't get knocked off, it was easy work. Now only a level 140 was left and I had to wait for him to use his charge, then I fed him when he was on cooldown. I continued this cycle for a while and I was being extra careful he wouldn't be able to shock me while I was dismounted from Big Belly. Before long she was mine, and I fittingly named her Zappy. I then ended this extremely smooth ocean day by throwing out all my creatures in the cove below my base. On day 65, I wanted to go on a big metal run, tame an Allosaurus, and do some more breeding. I realized I had accidentally left my griffins on breeding, and I collected their egg to hatch it for later. Then to prepare for the Allo tame, I made sure to repair my crossbow this time, and I crafted more arrows. With that done, it was time to go on a metal run, and this time I decided to take out my Argent with my Anky. This was because even though the Mantis gets more metal per node, the Anky would be better since it reduces the weight. Also, the Argent would make it easier to get the Anky near the nodes, unlike the Wyvern that has the turning radius of a football field. With that in mind, I set out and I was gathering metal like crazy. This new combo made things way easier, and this was my biggest run by far. After making it back to base, I dropped Annie in the perfect spot and loaded up the forges. I then grabbed a bunch of wood with peaches and got the metal smelting. Now that my chores were done for the day, I set out to tame an Allo. I knew they spawned in Viking Bay area, so that's where I was going, and on my way I had to stop at a drop. It was unfortunately a big letdown, and I whipped out my gene scanner to see if I could track one of these suckers down. Surprisingly, there was an entire pack right next to where the drop was. The pack was a pretty low level, but I didn't really care, and I would tame the leader, which was level 60. I helped them kill a Brontos so they wouldn't die, and I capped the Rex that was with them so it wouldn't get in the way. Their greed sickens me. They ate their Rex friend with no hesitation, and it gave me the willpower to execute the pack members I didn't want. At first, I thought I would be able to trank the owl from the sky, but this was a pain in the butt. She was surprisingly squirrely and hitting her was difficult. So I decided to set up the trap after all, and I started placing my gates from the sky. I then tried to open the gate from above, and I made a big mistake.
Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Land, please, Ragnar. Land. Land, Ragnar. Brother was throwing.
I accidentally jumped right into danger, and I was extremely puckered running away from that aloe. After that embarrassing display, that aloe deserved death, so I killed him, then focused on trapping the one I wanted. I easily let it in with my player, and a few tranks later she was sleeping. I fed her the prime meat from her dead companion, and once she tamed, I named her Allie. Finally, I went home to do some breeding to end the day. I was really hoping I would have better luck today, and I was going to crash out if I didn't get a good pyramine. I hatched my Griffin baby, and I was pumped when it at least transferred one of the good stats, so it would be my new female breeder. I then claimed the pyramines only to see they both sucked, and day 65 ended with a new hole in my wall. Day 66 was a big day, and I could finally tame one of the strongest creatures in Ark, the Therizinosaurus. I had to prepare by getting some narcotics, but before that, I wanted to get dripped out. I realized I could put on the dark tech armor skin onto my flak, and I looked thick.
Look at that. Overlord Cappy right here.
Once I was done being distracted, I ran out with Big Boy to do a huge narco run. Theries have a pretty high torpor and they wake up quickly, so I was anticipating needing a lot of narcotics. I also wanted to get a breeding pair, so I needed enough to tame 2. I grinded up a ton and I decided to head out on Skull to find one because I could pick them up and bring them back to base. I got an instant lock on my scanner right by my base and I set out to find it. Even with the tracker, the dense vegetation and variety of elevation made it very difficult to find. But when I did finally find it, I could not believe my eyes.
Dude, what level are you, pal?
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even kidding. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. 150 max level. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Ark.
I couldn't believe the first one I found was a max level and it was right below my base. She would have incredible stats and her breeding lines would carry me in the boss fight. I dropped her into my box and I wasted no time tranking her out. When she was downed, I saw her stats were extremely high and I was stoked. I grabbed a bunch of crops from my farm which would perfectly tame her and I started to wait. I also had to feed her a couple of narcotics to keep her down while she tamed, but after a while she was mine. I gave her the perfect name of Murder Turkey and I needed to find a male for her to breed with. I scoured the jungle area with Skull and I spotted Thery after Thery. It seemed like all my luck had been spent on the first one and I did not find anything over 100. Because of this, no matter which male I tamed was guaranteed to have worse stats than the female. So I decided to tame a level 55 even though it wasn't the best one I found. This is so I wouldn't waste more tranks than I had to, so I brought it to my trap and dropped him in. He downed in no time and I dumped a stack of Megos into his inventory to tame him. I named him Giggle and to end the day I wanted to breed them. When she pooped out the egg, it was luckily the perfect temperature at my base to hatch it and the baby was born. The baby ended up being decent and it got the best melee and it was a male, so it would make my chances a lot better of getting a perfect Thery in the future. With that good luck, this incredible day ended. I flew to the snow mountains to find a Karuku. I was hopeful some of them had spawned in since I hadn't been able to find any in the past. I was ecstatic when I found some of them and I felt extreme glee at the thought of what I was about to do to them. I landed next to the group of them and I picked out one of them to tame. I started tranking him and in no time he was down. I then fed him his relative to tame him and I named him the one that got away since he was the only penguin that survived my rampage. With that done, I had to take a step back and realize how much of a monster I had become. Now I had one tame out of the way and I set off to find a Kentro. This ended up working out perfectly since there was one right next to the snow mountain and I started shooting arrows down on her. She surprisingly tanked a lot of arrows before going down. I then picked a boatload of bushes and I got this angry spike ball tamed. I named her Skewer, then I went back to base to do some much needed breeding. My new female breeder Griffin was all grown up, so I got her mating as well as a bunch of my pyromanes. The Griffin baby hatched and I was pumped to see she got the good health as well as the melee, which was hyped. I also got twin pyromanes that finally transferred the stats I wanted. It took forever, but Ark finally gave me the stats I was looking for, so I needed to imprint on both of them. The Griffin was super good, but it got the bad weight, so I didn't want to make her my new main mount. This was because I would basically be always overweight with her, but I still decided to imprint on her. I named her Tempest, and I was able to imprint on both pyromanes, which was amazing. To end the day, I named them Ignis and Igni, and I was beyond pumped to finally get a good imprinted pyromane. On day 68, I wanted to knock another 2 miscellaneous tames off the list, and those were the Queen Bee and Mesopithecus. To prepare, I grabbed my ghillie suit, some rare flowers, and my bug repellent. With that, I was ready, so I started hunting for a bee nest. They normally spawn on rocky walls across Ragnarok, but I was having no luck. I searched several different locations across the map and there was not a nest in sight. All the popular bee spawns were empty and I was just about to give up when I finally lucked out. Oh, what? There's literally just a wild queen. Oh, wait, what? I didn't think they could spawn outside of being inside of a nest. So, wait, hold on. Let's land and try to get one of these. I was flabbergasted at this find and I wasted no time running towards the queen bee to feed her. She instantly tamed and I was beyond pumped. I also saw a second queen, so I tamed her as well. Normally the hardest part about this tame is destroying the bee nest without getting swarmed, and by finding a roaming queen bee I completely skipped this step. With one tame down, I tracked down a little monkey to tame. When I found the little guy, I couldn't believe my eyes. This monkey had superpowers and was able to mesh into the wall, so I needed to find a different one. I found a different one that was in a tameable location and I snuck up on him to feed him. In 2 feedings he was mine and I decided to adopt this guy since he looked similar to me IRL. I then flew back to base and I set up my new beehives upstairs in my house. Now that I had both tames done with, I wanted to do some preparation for the rock golem tame on day 70. For that tame, I needed a bunch of cannonballs, so I needed obsidian and spark powder to be able to make gunpowder. So before the day ended, I went out on an obsidian run with Draugr, and with his high weight, it was easy work. After I got plenty, I was on my way home when I looted a nuts drop. It had an insane Sarco saddle inside, which would make Lady Killer Croc basically unkillable. After that highlight, I ended day 68 by harvesting a boatload of flint and stone, then grinding it all into spark powder. When the best day of the 100 days began, I continued my spree of knocking miscellaneous tames off the list. I wanted to tame both sweet veggie cake tames, which were the snail and the ovis. These were going to be really easy tames and I didn't even need my scanner to find 2 snails. I executed a Sarco who tried to ruin my day and I quickly downed both snails. I fed them both 1 sweet veggie cake and I got Gary and Gloop tamed. That tame couldn't have been easier and I set off to the plains biome to find some sheep. I again didn't even need to use my scanner and I found a whole flock of them. I decided I would tame a male and a female, so if in the future I needed mutton, I would have easy access. I tamed the male in the group and I named him Odie. I then tamed one of the females and I named her Ollie. After making it back to base, I threw out my new sheep friend and I set up my snails upstairs in my house across from my beehives. With that done, I wanted to give breeding griffins another shot and hopefully transfer the last weight stat I needed. I also wanted to breed my theories, but they were still on mating cooldowns. Once the eggs were laid, I dumped them next to Darren so they would incubate. I was very disappointed when I didn't transfer the weight stat I wanted on either of the griffins, but they were females, so I kept them alive for the future, and the day concluded on this disappointing note. Day 70 was a big day and it was time to shoot some cannonballs into the head of a rock elemental. Before I was ready to set out, I had a lot of prep to do and I started by learning the engrams for a cannon. I checked what I needed to make it and I was only missing metal, so I loaded all the metal I gathered in the previous day into the smithy. I then crafted up this super expensive item and I could start the next phase of the preparation. I needed an absurd amount of gunpowder, so I threw all my charcoal into the pestles. I then grinded it together with the spark powder and I crafted a bunch. Next, I needed to make some foundations, so I went on a very quick wood run with Peaches and made 2 stone ones. With that done, I moved all the obsidian in Draugr's inventory into the smithy so I'd be ready to make cannonballs once the gunpowder was done. Now it was time to make the trap, and for some reason metal billboards really glitch out the rock golem. So I made a ton of them and I had everything I needed except cannonballs. I started crafting a bunch of them once the gunpowder was done, and ultimately I ran out of cementing paste. So I needed to steal some beaver dams, and in the meantime I crafted another storage box to help me hold all the taming supplies while I went out. With Ragnar, I zipped across the map in seconds and started stealing from the horde of beavers. Before I was done, they managed to break my helmet, so when I got home I had to fix it. With that done, I got back to the task at hand and I got to work making a ton of cannonballs. In total, I was able to make 11 of them, and I set out on Ragnar to the desert. On my way, I also made a cool find. Ooh, and on my flight to the desert, I did find a Titanosaur. So it's good to know that where these guys spawn, and this will probably be the guy that we end up taming, honestly, at the end of the 100 days, so that's sweet. Once I made it to my destination, I started to hunt for them, and it is usually really easy to pick out which rocks are an elemental in disguise. But I couldn't find a single one, so I used my scanner and I was able to finally track one down. Once I spotted him, I found out it was a level 20, which I could tame, but I really wanted better. Luckily, I got another lock and I found a level 85, which was perfect. I touched down on the ground with Ragnar and I set up my billboards to form a box and left one side of the box open. Now I was actually ready to get this big guy trapped, so I got its attention. I then led it up the hill and tanked a few hits from it with Ragnar as he ran into the box. In a hurry, I quickly placed the last few billboards and he was totally stuck. Now it was time for the hard part of knocking it out. I started to set up my cannon area and I had thought about how precise I needed to be. If you don't hit the rock golem directly in its head, it won't take torpor. So I needed to make sure my aim was good and I didn't have enough cannonballs for a lot of mess ups. I got him to stand up, then I placed my cannon perfectly in line with his head to make my life easier. I then aimed my cannon down since it seemed high and I shot my first ball. It was an absolute dome shot and I got too eager, which caused me to miss the second shot. I was a lot more careful now and I made sure to only shoot after he used his rock throw. I was absolutely hyped when I landed the last shot and he crashed to the floor. Now I needed to get his taming food, so I quickly got some sulfur from a nearby mountain and I waited for him to tame. Once he was finally mine, I couldn't be more excited and I named this guy Boomy to end the day. On day 71, I temporarily stepped away from the challenge because I had to start collecting artifacts for day 100. My plan was to complete the snow cave and get the artifact to the pack. To be successful, I would have to defeat the Deathworm Queen, so I was planning on bringing several Pyromanes with me on this adventure. But before they would be ready, I had to heal them all by killing wild creatures, which would also give them some bonus levels in the process. First, I set out with Igni since she would be one of the strongest Pyromanes I had. I massacred a bunch of creatures with her and got her to around 10k HP, which was awesome. I then used her Flame Absorb ability to heal her a bunch and she was ready for the cave. I then did the same thing with Ignis and I got his stats to around the same level and got him fully healed. With that done, I felt I had enough muscle, but I also wanted to bring 2 extra Pyromanes with me just in case. So I crowded up my next 2 strongest Pyromanes and I decided to name one of them Melty. Now I was pretty much ready for the cave and I just needed to grab my fur just in case I needed it. After a short flight with Ragnar, I found the entrance and dove right in. I had my eyes peeled for any drops and I managed to find one right before the deeper part of the cave. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That saddle armor is ridiculous on that thing. Oh my gosh. I was astounded at how OP the cave drop was and I desperately wanted to get more of them deeper in the cave. This was the farthest I could go with Ragnar, so I crowed him and continued my journey on Ignis. I ran down the icy tunnels and based off memory from ASE, I knew which direction of the cave to take. It wasn't long before I ran into my first danger and I had to fight a ton of ice deathworms. Luckily, Ignis was an absolute Chad and didn't struggle with these fights in the slightest. I continued through the cave and I was ecstatic when I found another drop. It had a nuts Dinotherium saddle, which was sweet, and I would definitely have to tame a high level one. Before long, I reached the waterfall part of the cave that led to the mini boss and I prepared myself for the plunge. I jumped off the waterfall and came up with a plan. Okay, so if we jump down below there, the Deathworm Queen's gonna come out. So we need to throw out our guys here and wait for the timers. I saw the queen waiting for me and I didn't want to risk the fight with only 2 Pyromanes. So I decided to wait the timer to have 3. So that's exactly what I did and I threw out Melty, but when I jumped down to finally face her, she was nowhere to be found. She must have glitched out and despawned somehow while I was waiting. I was definitely not complaining though, and I started looting all the amazing drops that were at the bottom. There were insane flak armor BPs and nuts saddles for some of my ocean creatures. This made me very happy, and in the future I would have to craft up some insane flak. I then finished my job for the day and I claimed my very first artifact.
With that done, I made the journey home and decided to do some Griffin breeding to end the day. Man, Gruff has been getting to work, man. Gruff, look at all these ladies that are here for you, man. You got a good life, my brother. You got a good life. I then hatched all my Griffin babies, and all of them yet again didn't have the stats I wanted. This marked the end of the day, and I was disappointed, but at the least they were all female, so I had a bunch more opportunities in the future. When day 72 began, it was time to get back to the challenge, and I needed to tame a Phaseolus. But before that, I needed to go on a huge metal run because I was basically completely out. So I took out Flapper and Annie to the Snow Mountain. This unbeatable combo had me showering in metal in no time. While I was out on my mission, I also saw a pack of hyenas, which was good information, and when I decided to tame one, I would know exactly where to go. With my metal run done, I also went on a huge wood run with Peaches so I could fuel the forges. After that, I loaded all the wood and all the metal into the forges, which ended my chore. Now I could refocus on the tame, and the only things I needed to do to prep was grab my ghillie suit as well as some grenades. This was easy work, and before long I was ready, so I set out to the desert with Ragnar. And my strategy for this tame, so basically they're in like little sand mounds, like giant mounds, and you gotta throw like a grenade to explode them out of it, right? Then once they're exploded out of it, you can ride them, and then you just gotta steer them around without getting like knocked off and slam them into rocks until they're knocked out. Little did I know the tame sounded easy in theory, but it was going to take me forever. It took me a while to find my first one, and it was only a level 20. Since these guys are a pretty strong tame, I definitely wanted to bring it in the boss fight with me, so I needed to find a better one. Luckily, I found a mound in the sand and I landed next to it so it would surface. I was pumped to see it was a level 145, which was exactly what I was looking for. Now I needed to clear the area so nothing would interfere, then I would blow it up out of the sand. With that done, I equipped my ghillie suit and slowly crept towards it, then lobbed a grenade. When it blew up, it worked perfectly and I was able to climb on her, then steer her into rocks. I quickly found out this tame was going to take a ridiculous amount of time. Normal rocks barely rose her torpidity, and I realized I needed to target metal rocks or crystal that would be more effective. So that's exactly what I did, and I slammed into tons of metal and tons of crystal. Until 40 minutes later, I was finally able to knock out this annoying beast. I then got her some prime meat and I managed to perfectly tame her. I then gave her the fitting name of Major Brain Damage, and day 72 concluded. For day 73, I wanted to get two miscellaneous tames knocked off the list, the Otter and the Hesperornis. These tames both require you to passive feed them fish, so I grabbed Snatcher, who would help me a ton in this task. I then used my scanner to track down an otter, which ended up being super far from my base. After the long flight, I landed next to a peaceful pond and found it. With that, I put Snatcher to work and I had him hunt down fish for me. I would whistle him to attack a fish and he would kill it, then bring it to me. This was amazing help, and I started feeding the otter. I repeated these steps and one of the fish hardcore broke my game. What the heck is going on? What the heck is going on right now? After that distraction, I managed to get the otter tamed, and like a horrible person, I named him Fur Coat. With that done, I tracked down a group of Hesperornis in a lake by Blue Obelisk. Now I needed to execute everything in the area to make sure I'd be uninterrupted during this tame. Once that was done, I got to work using Snatcher to help me collect fish, and I got my first feed on a level 20. I was quickly distracted though when I had to lead away a 140 Spino before she ruined my tame. As I did, I was hopeful she would still be in the area when I was ready to tame her in the coming days. With that done, I fed the ducks several times until she was mine. I then gave her the most diabolical name I could think of, and I named her Fat Rolls. Now my tames for the day were complete, and I wanted to see if I could finally breed a perfect griffin. I bred the new females I got on day 71, and I had 3 really good chances to get a new main griffin. When the eggs hatched, I was shocked to see they were literally all perfect. I then gave this monstrous trio the names of Typhoon, Cyclone, and Rain Dancer. To make things even better, I was able to fully imprint on all 3 of these guys as day 73 ended. On day 74, it was time to get another artifact in the lava cave, and I wanted to tame an Onyx while I was there. To get ready, I grabbed my ghillie suit and I made a couple grappling hooks just in case I needed them. Finally, I wanted to breed my sheep to get mutton, since it would give me the best chance of taming an Onyx in one feeding. These guys are a pain in the butt to tame, so I wanted to make the process as easy as possible. Once I had plenty of mutton, I set out to the lava cave. Once I made it there, I found the entrance that was extremely well hidden by overgrown vines. I then wandered inside, and the first thing I noticed was that I was getting destroyed by traps, and it didn't seem like a whole lot was spawning in the cave. But I still decided to put on my ghillie and apply my bug repellent in hopes I would find a bat soon. I entered the next room and walked across a sketchy vine. Then I was pumped when I spotted a bat in the corner of the room. I got ready for the tame by putting mutton on my hotbar, then I grappled across the gap. I was very relieved when I managed to tame the bat in one feeding, and I crossed this annoying tame off the list. I then went to loot the drop that was in the cave, but it was dookie. With that, I continued my journey through the cave and I walked across several more vines. The cave then opened up and I ran past the very minimal creatures that seemed to be spawning. I don't know why my cave was very empty, but since I hadn't loaded it in and I was on single player, I figured that was why. But it made my journey a whole lot easier, and I made a series of sketchy jumps to get across the lava lake. I then noticed several drops and I had to get them. Oh my gosh, that is nuts. So we got an insane piece of Ascendant black helmet. I don't really care about this stuff, and I'm never gonna craft that, so that can go away. That's insane. So we don't have to craft our flak blueprint helmet that we got, and instead we could probably just use that. I then looted the other drop and I got an insane harpoon launcher, which would be incredibly useful for the final water tames. With that, I continued into the last chamber of the cave, and this time I had to fight a bunch of creatures that were standing in my way. But I managed to take them down and I claimed the second artifact, the artifact of the hunter. I then worked my way out of the cave, getting a final drop as I went, and once I made it back to base, I threw out my tames and named my new bat Stinker as day 74 ended. Days 75 through 76 were dedicated towards getting a breeding pair of Spinos. A strong Spino would really help me in the boss fight, so getting a good one was essential. But first, I needed to prepare by going on a narco run, and I wanted to build a trap. Ragnar had plenty of spoiled meat for me, and I moseyed around on big boy harvesting. I went on a massive spree and I cleared pretty much all of the bushes near my base. With that done, I grinded up a bunch of narcos and I got to the next task of building some arrows. This was done quickly and I decided to build a trap that only worked in ASE. I don't know why my brain didn't realize this was not going to work, but I proceeded to waste a ton of time doing this. I prepared a whole box trap that was obviously going to be too small for the Spino. After I was done wasting time, I was ready to go out and it was time to pick my new main Griffin. Cyclone seemed to call to me, so I hopped on him and took to the skies. Before I went to tame some Spinos, I also wanted to kill the Alpha Carno I saw a while ago so I could level him up. Luckily, it was still alive and I started hunting it. My new Griffin was an absolute problem and he shredded it insanely fast. It's already dead? Oh my gosh! Cyclone, you're a monster! I then pumped 28 levels into my new OP mount and he was going to be unstoppable. With that done, I set off to find the 140 Spino I saw during the Hesperornis tame. But when I got there, I couldn't find it for the life of me. I even tried to use my gene scanner, but I couldn't track it down and I was devastated to learn it must have despawned. With that disappointment, I flew to the center trench where Spino spawns were frequent. I started hunting and the first one I found was a level 95 female, which was mid, so I kept looking. The Ark gods then made up for robbing me from the 140 when I found a 145 male. This guy would be a beast once tamed, and my plan was to tame the level 95 to be his breeding partner. I then set up my useless trap and got the Spino's attention. As expected, he would not go in the trap and he was clearly way too small to fit inside. But for some reason, my two remaining brain cells could not comprehend this and I tried many more times to trap him. As I watched him glitch out hard, I finally realized I needed to tame him without the trap. I made a bunch of tranks and I started sniping him from the sky. Doing this tame again made me beyond grateful to have the Griffin, and it makes solo taming much easier. Having a flyer you can shoot off the back of is an OP taming aid, and it makes pretty much any knockout tame easy. I then proceeded to chase the Spino around and get a ton of free shots on him when he glitched out in the water. He couldn't move and he was left sitting there staring at me with his dumb face. Before long, the Spino was getting super sleepy and he bolted away to try to escape. I then was able to down him as he buried his face into the sand. I don't know what he was doing, but it just further showed how glitchy this game can be. I then fed him some prime meat, and since his sail was barely sticking above the water, he wasn't drowning, which was super lucky for me. After this beast tamed, I named him Mr. Toothy and I set off to find the female. Once I made it to the other Spino, I had to help it kill an absolute ton of creatures in the area so the tame would be safe. Once they were all dead, I started shooting it. Because she was trying to attack some baby stegos, I got a bunch of easy shots without her running around. This made the tame a breeze, and before long she ran away, then collapsed to the floor. After feeding her, she tamed, and I named her Mrs. Toothy. To end these successful days, I wanted to breed up my new Spinos, so I threw them out, then mated them. Once she laid her fertilized egg, I again used my main pal Darren to help me hatch it. When the egg was ready, I was shocked to see triplets pop out. Not only that, but they all had the perfect stats on the first try, which was insane. This was the breeding luck I was talking about, and I named the trio. I gave them the genius names of Chomper, Clomper, and Clamper. To end these days, I did a bunch of different imprints on these Spinos, and I got them all 100% imprinted. On day 77, I wanted to knock another 2 non-saddle tames off the list, the Hyenodon and the Microraptor. To prepare for the Hyena tame, I needed to build a custom trap, so I grabbed a couple pre-built structures for it and my ghillie suit. Next, I needed to build a ceiling and a ramp, so I crafted both of them, then set out. I'd seen a bunch of these guys during my metal run, so that's where I went. Once I found them again, I started placing my trap, and it works by having the hyena sit on a hatch frame that allows you to easily pet it from underneath. Once the trap was complete, I put on my ghillie suit and went to pick up one of the pack members with Cyclone. Luckily, the hyena was small enough that he could pick her up, and I dropped her in the top of the box. I then flew out of render distance so she wouldn't be spooked anymore, and then I flew back to the trap. I crept up to the box slowly so I wouldn't spook her, then I jumped on the ramp inside. I then was able to pet her from underneath, and I was in no danger of spooking her. This custom trap had worked like a charm, and I was able to easily finish the tame. I named her the unoriginal name of Doggo, and I set off to find a Microraptor. After getting closer to Blue Ob, I was able to track one, and I chased it down to knock it out.
Why are you running? Why are you running? You're not gonna get away.
The second it tried to attack me, I bulleted it, then knocked it out. I also noticed a Rex very close by that I had to take care of before it ruined my tame. It ended up being a 145 male, which was insane, and I let him away so I could tame him in the future. I then fed the Microraptor some prime, and after he tamed, he didn't even survive long enough to get named.
Yes, sir. There we go. We tamed him up. We're gonna name this guy, Oh, whoa, whoa. Oh, well, there he goes. These bears were nowhere in sight. Oh my gosh. Well, that counts as a tame, but he didn't even make it long enough to get named.
After watching my new tame get devoured, I wanted to end the day by breeding my fairies. Once they were done, they laid the egg, and I incubated it nearby until it hatched. I was stoked when the baby had the perfect stats, and I named her Tickle Chicken. As day 77 ended, I fully imprinted on her. My plan for day 78 was to knock the saddle tame, the Megalania, off the list, as well as tame a Titanoboa. To prepare, I needed to make some more arrows, and I needed to get a fertilized egg to feed the boa. So I got all the materials I needed, then crafted a bunch of arrows. Once that was done, I bred 2 of the triplet Spinos to get a large fertilized egg. I then took out Cyclone and swooped my way to the lava biome. Once I made it there, I got distracted scouting Rexes since I could tame them in the very next day. But oh boy was I glad I did, and I found an insane breeding partner for the 145 male we saw yesterday. Oh my gosh, a 145 female! Okay, perfect. So we've got the 145 male and the 145 female right here. So that's the 2 Rexes we're going to end up taming tomorrow. After refocusing, I started scouting for low-level boas since I only had 1 egg to get this done. I found a level 15, which was perfect, but I needed to kill the other snake in the area as well as the other bad creatures. Once they were clear, I tried to lob the egg to him, but my throw was a bad one and I had to re-pick up the egg. This caused a bunch more creatures to aggro on me. Then, while trying to kill them, I executed the boa I was trying to get like a noob. While searching for another one, I found 2 Megalanias, which were both a level 20. So I decided to put the boa tame on pause and to tame one of these 2 lizards. I really didn't care about getting a good level, so I easily tranked one of them from the sky until it went down. I then cleared the dangerous area and I fed it raw meat until it tamed. I named him Larry the Lizard, and I scouted until I found another level 15 boa. This time, when I lobbed the egg down, it was a perfect throw and he tamed. I named him Snake in My Boot, and day 78 concluded after throwing out my new tames at base. Days 79 through 80 were dedicated towards taming a breeding pair of Rexes. I already knew where 2 super strong ones were, so I got straight to preparing. First, I crafted a Rex saddle, then I needed to make some large bear traps which would help me pin them in place. I also needed more arrows, so I harvested flint, thatch, and fiber. With that done, I crafted 95 more arrows and I made 6 large bear traps. Once I was done, I was completely ready to tame these two monstrous Rexes. The first one I went to was the 145 male, and I put my gates and bear traps in my hotbars so I could easily place them. I then went to help him clear the area so I could trap him with no interruptions. With that done, I found a nice and flat area, then placed down two bear traps right next to each other. The way this was going to work is I would have the Rex chase me until it stepped on one of the bear traps. Then I would place my 4 gateways in a box around it so it couldn't escape. Also, having 2 bear traps would give me the extra time I needed to make sure I got all 4 gates placed. I then got his attention and I let him into the bear trap. I heard the clink of it go off and I easily placed all 4 gates around him. Now he was trapped and this tame was going to be a breeze. I crafted up a bunch of extra tranks and I started to knock out this titan. He had really high torpor, so I stood there for a while shooting arrow after arrow. Once he finally crashed to the ground, I fed him some prime and I waited until he tamed. Once he was mine, I was over the moon to have a beastly Rex and I named him Bloodlust because of his cool red coloring. I then grabbed all of my gates and I had to repair my damaged crossbow before I was ready to get the second Rex. So I made a quick pit stop at base, repaired it in the smithy, then set out to the lava biome. On my way, I also saw a juicy yellow drop to loot. It didn't have the best loot, but it had an improved Plesiosaur saddle that I could put on Nessie, which was cool. With that done, I dove into the lava biome and for some reason my game was glitching out like crazy. My game was stuttering hard and I had to relog, which put me in a lovely mood. After getting back in, I found the 145 female and I placed down 2 bear traps so I could trap her in the exact same way as the male. I heard the click and I carefully placed the gates around her until she was stuck. Using the bear traps really made it easy to trap Rexes, and using the same method would have definitely helped me in the Spino taming day. I pumped her full of arrows and just like the male, she had incredibly high torpor. So I was standing there for a while and I kind of lost my mind. You won't even bite me. Bite me, boy, I said bite me. Bite me. You won't even bite me. She's scared of me. She senses my... I was gonna say she senses my aura, but I don't think I could recover from saying something that cringe. I then finished the job and I got her knocked out, then tamed. I named this girl Ruby and I went back to base to breed my new pair. Once I made it there, I cleared out a big area in my base by moving the insane amount of griffins I had. With the amount of times I had to breed to get a perfect one, they were heavily cluttering my base. Once that was done, I threw out both Rexes and I bred them up. Darren then helped me out yet again by helping to incubate the egg, and I was very appreciative. You know what, Darren? You've earned it. You get a kiss, Darren. The baby Rex hatched and I was pumped to see it got the best health and melee, which was hype. I then named him Rudy and waited to imprint on him. Unfortunately, he asked for something I didn't have, so I couldn't imprint on him and these days ended. On day 81, my only goal was to tame a Gigantopithecus. This is a non-saddle passive tame that I had forgotten about. I barely had any prep for this tame, and after I got my ghillie suit, then a stack of Medros from Big Boy, I was ready. I knew these guys were very common in the Redwoods biome, so I hopped on Cyclone and set off. Once I made it there, my scanner had an immediate lock and I was able to locate a level 85, which was perfect. Gonna equip our ghillie suit, put this in our hotbar, and get to work putting berries up his butt. Hey yo, as weird as it sounds, that's how it feels passive taming this guy, and I started feeding him. I then watched the giant ape from a safe distance and waited for him to get hungry again. I continued this process and he was almost tamed when he decided to choose violence. I wasn't anywhere near him and he smacked me into next month. I then was forced to fly away until he calmed, and I was hopeful I could still sneak up on him with one broken piece of ghillie. Luckily, this wasn't an issue and I crossed this tame off the list. And this guy is gonna be named Happy's brother. You guys see the resemblance here? We are one and the same. With that done, I still had time left in the day and I decided I wanted to hunt down some desert drops. Since the cave crates had been so good, I was super curious to see if I could get some good stuff. I scoured the vast sand ocean, keeping my eyes peeled on the floor. At first, I was having no luck and I was hopeful I didn't miss a drop because they are super hard to see because of their small size. But I finally spotted one and it was absolutely nuts. I got an insane fabricated sniper that was much better than my current one. With that nice find, I had to at least get one more of them. I flew over the entire desert and I was pumped when I finally spotted one by the coast. Yes! Oh my gosh, a pump action shotgun, yes! Thank you, Ark. This shotgun would be extremely useful in not only the final boss fight, but the last caves I would have to go through. To end this awesome day, I went home and crafted a bunch of shotgun ammo. My plan for day 82 was to hunt down the elusive Plesiosaur and knock this final non-saddle water tame off the list. I also wanted to get more black pearls when I was done so I'd be ready to tame a Tuso in the future. With that, I grabbed a bunch of honey, which is the taming food for the Plesiosaur, and I loaded it into Cyclone. I then realized I needed to repair my scuba gear and I was completely out of polymer. I only had a limited amount of time until the honey spoiled, so I didn't want to waste time and I decided to make a sacrifice. Let's go kill some penguins really quick. You know what? Do I do it? No, 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 Otter, no. No, Otter, did you get some polymer? Oh, you did. Perfect. In my eyes, it was a sacrifice that had to be made, but poor Fat Rolls will be missed. Oh my gosh, I was too lazy to go out and get polymer, so Fat Rolls, he had to go. Now my gear was totally ready, so I flew down to Lady Killer Croc and set out on my mission. If you feel bad for Fat Rolls, type justice for Fat Rolls in the comment. With that, I entered the deep depths of the ocean. These guys only spawn in the deepest parts of the ocean, so I needed to go as far down as possible. I went as far down as I could, and with each new drop in the ocean floor, I made sure to dive down. Until eventually, I was in the deepest trench Ragnarok had to offer. I tried to use my gene scanner to see if I could track it, but it wasn't even an option on my scanner. So I had to find one of these guys naturally and avoid the insane amount of anglerfish while I was at it. But I ended up getting extremely lucky and I found one pretty quickly. I put honey in my inventory and in one feeding he quickly tamed. I then had to make a quick getaway so he wouldn't die to the literal 100 anglerfish that were now angry. Once I was safe, I decided to name this guy Lucky Larry and made a trip to Viking Bay to get some more pearls. I easily harvested all the water scorpions and I even harvested a couple black pearl nodes on the ocean floor. With that done, I would have plenty of pearls for a Tuso in the future, and day 82 ended. Days 83 through 84 were very exciting and it was time to tame a Dinosuchus. I had some prep to do and I grabbed my nut saddle, then my ghillie suit. It was partially broken though, so I had to get polymer to fix it. So I set out to the snow mountains and every fiber of my being was hoping to find some penguins. When I finally found them, I knew what had to be done. Yeah. I feel bad for you. No, I don't. They're no longer. Now I had plenty of organic polymer, so I went back to base. After quickly grabbing some fiber, I was able to repair my entire set and I just needed to get some taming food. I figured it would make my life easy if I had some mutton, so I bred my sheep. Once the baby was born, I killed it and harvested it until I had plenty. With that, I was ready to go and I set out to the swamp to hopefully find a high-level breeding pair of crocs. They were absolutely everywhere and I had very high hopes of finding a good one. But I spyglassed bad level after bad level and my initial luck was not pretty in the slightest. It wasn't until I made it to an outer island of the swamp that I found what I was looking for. I found a max level which was super hype and I started clearing the area so nothing would interrupt my tame. The way this tame works is you have to put on your ghillie suit and have taming food in your hotbar. You then have to feed the giant croc when it opens its mouth, then run away before it becomes hostile. With that in mind, I waited patiently and once I saw her open her mouth, I shoveled in a piece of mutton. It tamed her nearly 10% and I realized bringing mutton was definitely the right move. I then continued the cycle and I got feeding after feeding. At one point, I accidentally stuck around for too long and I was pooping my pants as I saw her charge me with her gaping mouth. This was literally nightmare fuel and I had to wait in the sky until she calmed down. Besides this encounter, there were very little hiccups. I only had to stop the tame a couple times when she got distracted by other creatures. But before long, I shoveled in the final piece of mutton and I tamed my first Dinosuchus. She had incredibly high melee, which was amazing, and I named her Big Hitter. Now I definitely needed to find a high level male to be a suitable breeding partner for her. It took me a while of searching, but I found a 145 male which could not have been better. I then had to repeat the process I just did and tame this angry male that was significantly more feisty. But I shoveled in piece after piece and made sure to keep my distance. I was doing amazing on this tame until he got into some really deep water and I was in trouble.
Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. He got a really bad bite on me. I might die. Dang, that freaking hurt. Dang, one bite from this guy was enough to consume the meat. Consume the meat. Consume the meat. Dang, because he's in the water, I couldn't get away quick enough, and he absolutely wrecked me. He literally almost one-shot me, and I definitely wasn't going to make the same mistake of feeding him in deep water again. I continued to tame, and I shoveled mutton after mutton into his mouth until this monster tamed. I named him Stoic, and I was pumped to find out he had a super high health stat. Finished these amazing days, I threw out my crocs and bred them. While I was waiting, I realized I actually left my Spinos on breeding, and I picked up their egg to use it in the future. After that distraction, the crocs laid their egg and I hatched it up next to Darren. When it hatched, they were twins, and unfortunately they got the worst stat combination from the parents, and they were both males. So I made sure to take care of them as these successful days ended. On day 85, I wanted to knock 2 miscellaneous tames off the list, the Oviraptor and the Pteranodon. To prep for these tames, I needed a bunch of fertilized eggs. I already had a fertilized Spino egg from the previous day, but I needed a lot more than that. So first I bred up my Theres, and I bred a bunch of Griffins. I then collected all of their eggs, and with the total amount I felt I had plenty. So I loaded them all into Cyclone's inventory and I set out. My first target was an Oviraptor, so I tracked one down with my scanner. This tame is not a hard one, and I just needed to knock one out, then feed it a fertilized egg. The Oviraptor ended up being a good distance away, and I had to fly well past the swamp to find it. As soon as I found it, an Ichthyornis stole one of my eggs, which put me in a horrible mood. Before I started to tame, I had to kill all the other stupid birds in the area. Once that was done, I bowled the Oviraptor, which was a level 85. After one arrow, he was down, and I dumped my 2 Griffin eggs into his inventory. I was hopeful these would be enough for the tame, since I needed all the rest of my eggs for the Pteranodon tame. Luckily, this was the case, and I knocked this tame off the list. I named him Gobbler, and I set off to find a Pteranodon. The first one my scanner locked onto was meshed in the floor, so I had to keep looking. Eventually, I found another pack of them, and it had a level 15 in the group, which was perfect. I forgot to grab my trap for this guy, so I had to quickly build a stone box with a ramp. With that done, I placed it, then grabbed the Pteranodon and dropped him in the box. With that done, I made some standing torches so I could hatch my Spino egg. Once it hatched, I lowered its health a ton so the Pteranodon would be able to kill it. I then tried to get it in the box, but it would not walk in for some stupid reason. So I had to open the box, which allowed the Pteranodon to escape. After wrangling him again, I let the Pteranodon attack me while next to the Spino, which finally got the job done. I was super relieved to have this annoying tame done, and day 85 concluded. Day 86 was going to be an absolutely brutal one, and I had to survive Life's Labyrinth to get the 4 artifacts that were inside. I had a lot of prep for Ark's hardest cave, and I started out by fully repairing all of my flak armor. Next, I proceeded to waste a ton of my time and resources crafting a boatload of grappling hooks. This is because I would soon realize the Ark devs hate all of us and disabled grapples in this wretched cave. Next, I went on a huge flint and stone run so I could craft spark powder. This is so I could make more bullets for my new shotgun and fabricated sniper. Next, I crafted a ton of sleeping bags, not knowing you also can't place these in the cave. With that done, I made a ton of gunpowder and crafted a boatload of bullets for both types of guns. Next, I needed to get my tames ready for the cave, and I crowd up Charcoal, my sacrificial Pegomastax. You guys will see why he's named that, and I crowd a second sacrificial tame, Speedy Boy. Finally, I grabbed my scuba gear and I was ready for this cave. We stand at the Lost Labyrinth Cave. I don't know if I'm gonna come back out of this one, fellas. I then entered the cave, and I needed to press a combination of buttons that spelled Drakkar to get further inside. So I pressed all the buttons D, R, K, K, A, and finally R. This opened a door in the center, and I jumped down the freefall, which officially trapped me in the cave until I got out. I tried to place a sleeping bag, and I realized I was completely stranded inside once I couldn't put it down. I then continued to the next chamber of the cave, and this is the trial by fire room. I had to crawl on the floor, and if I stood up for even a second, I would be burnt to a crisp. So I carefully maneuvered through the room and pushed the right sequence of buttons to open the right side door. With that done, I passed my first trial, and I made it to the next room, which immediately spiked me. I then walked through the easy next chamber, and I did get grabbed by a Capro, but Ignis and my shotgun saved me. I continued through the cave, being extra careful of spike traps, and I looted a nice drop before going into the next room.
This room was a breeze with my Pyromane, and I grabbed yet another drop before continuing. The next area had a stupid amount of traps, and as the loot goblin I am, I tried to grab a drop and I almost got executed by flaming arrows. With that close call, I made it past this room and went to the next area. I powered through this endless maze and I followed a guide on how to get through since it's basically impossible without it. I had to quickly press button after button and race time, but I barely made it past the last door just in the nick of time. I then dropped down and claimed the first artifact of the cave, the artifact of the clever. I then made it to the sacrifice room and I had to burn charcoal alive to make it in further. I then had to go through several more trap chambers and I figured out quickly I couldn't use my grapples to skip any of them. But finally I saw the light and I made it to the very end of the cave. Now I just had to fight some spirit dinos to claim 2 more artifacts. This was easy work for Ignis, and once they all died, I claimed the artifact of the devious as well as the massive. I then went to the other side, which was just as horrifying and even had a horrible parkour walk with instant death if I fell even once. But I finally claimed the artifact of the Skylord on the other side and sacrificed Speedy Boy to make my escape from this horrible cave. After making it out of the cave for a second time, I was mentally insane, but I got all 4 artifacts and day 86 ended. On day 87, I could get back to the taming challenge and it was time to tame a Quetzal. This was an exciting tame, and to prepare, I just needed to make arrows as well as grab some honey. I quickly plowed through harvesting resources for arrows, made them, then grabbed a ton of honey. With that done, I was ready and I set out to hopefully find a decent level. I tried to scout for the level 95 I saw earlier, but it was no longer there. I did manage to find one, but it was only a level 50 and I definitely wanted better. Luckily, I found another one near the main crack, which was a level 130, which was perfect. Now I got ready to tame it, and if you guys don't know, Quetzals will follow honey if you throw it, so it makes it easy to get them to the ground. I threw several of them until she was in a good spot, and I placed all the gates around her to lock her in place. This trapping method worked like a charm, and now I just needed to knock her out. She had incredibly high torpor, so I was sitting there for a while shooting arrow after arrow, but before long she went down and she most definitely broke her neck in the process. I then killed a Parasaur to get plenty of prime, and I waited for this massive bird to tame. I gave her the great name of Overgrown Pigeon and I went home to do some breeding. I threw her out, then mated my Rexes as well as Dinosuchus. I collected their eggs and I was very hopeful I would get a perfect baby out of one of these eggs. I threw them down next to Darren and I got arked. The Rex egg literally vanished into thin air and I knew somewhere an Ark dev was flipping me off. What the heck? Did that Rex egg die? The heck? Where'd it go? We do not have another Rex because that egg literally just vanished for no reason. Great. I got arked. I got absolutely arked. With that upsetting situation, I hatched the croc egg and it wasn't perfect, but it did get the good melee. So I named him Billy and I decided to imprint on him just in case I never got one with both stats. Once this was done, day 87 ended. When the sun rose on day 88, I had a big tame ahead of me and I had to get a mosasaur. I had a good amount of prep work for this day and I started by getting some narcotics going. I grabbed a bunch of spoiled meat from Cyclone and I used my dedicated berry gatherer big boy to get the job done. I then grinded up a ton and now I wanted to craft a bunch of Trank spear bolts. Since I got an incredibly powerful harpoon launcher, I wanted to take full advantage of it and use it to help me knock out the high torpor Mosa. But I needed to craft Trank spear bolts and they were very expensive. First, I grabbed wood and thatch from Peaches, then crafted a bunch of regular spear bolts. Then I needed to make Trank darts to combine them with. So I crafted some simple rifle ammo, then converted those into darts. With that done, I made 13 Trank spears. I then grabbed my scuba and I was ready to go. On my way to the ocean, I also killed a Bronto for prime meat so I would have solid taming food once I got the job done. I dove down into the water and I again spotted the level 85 Tuso, which I would be able to tame very soon. Continuing on, I tried to use my gene scanner to track one down, but I got no hits and I would have to do this the old-fashioned way. I swam down the watery trench and it wasn't long before I spotted a giant white monster. It was an alpha mosasaur, but there was also a level 95 normal mosa right next to it. Now my challenge became clear and I had to somehow separate these two so I could tame the one I wanted. I sniped the one I wanted and I swam away as fast as possible. As I got farther away, since I didn't shoot the alpha, it lost aggro quicker than the smaller one. So I got the distance I needed and I led it as far away as possible now that it was separated from the alpha. The new area I led it to was considerably more safe and now I could use my OP harpoon gun to knock this sucker out. I had to make every one of these shots count since I had such a limited number of them. Luckily, since my Sarco had such a good saddle, taking the occasional hit wasn't an issue and I managed to shoot all my trank spears. Once I ran out, I knew the Mozo was close to going down and I could finish the job with my crossbow. As I was finishing up the tame, things definitely got a little chaotic. What? There's another Mosasaur? Are you kidding me, dude? Okay, she's down. She's down. We're chilling. With that, I slaughtered the intruding Moza and I got this beastly water tame knocked off the list. I decided to name her Big Blue, and this successful water journey marked the end of day 88. On day 89, I wanted to do a double tame for the Utyrannus and Perlovia. To prepare, I grabbed my trap and I needed to repair my crossbow as well as make some arrows. So I went on a quick wood run with Peaches. I then repaired my crossbow and made a bunch of arrows. With that done, I was ready and started hunting for a good Uti. First, I scouted the snow mountain near my base, and of course there wasn't even a single one in sight. I had seen them all over this mountain several times before, but not today. So I went close to the desert biome where they can spawn in the rocky trenches. I got an immediate lock on one, but it was a low level. Luckily, this seemed to be a hot spot for them, and I found several more, and most importantly a level 95, which was perfect. My next move was to clear the area the best I could. So I killed several of the Carnos that were following him, and I went to engage a Serrata he was fighting. Oh no. This is what sucks about the UD tame, which is why we're going to do it on foot. Once my Griffin calmed down, I shot the Serrata to death along with some other creatures in the area. I then started to set down my gate trap, and while I was doing it, I got feared yet again. After recovering, I was able to finish placing my trap and I landed Cyclone on top of a pillar. With that, I made sure to kill off any remaining creatures in the area and I jumped down. As I ran to trap the Uti, it hit me a ton, but I got him lined up and bolted into the trap. Once he ran inside, I yet again had to tank a couple hits, but I got the door closed and he was trapped. With that, the hard part was over and I tranked him until he was down. I put some prime in his inventory, and after a short wait, he was mine. I named him Blackhawk and I went into the snow to find a Perlovia. After some searching, I got a lock on one. When I saw the mound, I whistled Cyclone towards it so he would get stunned instead of me. I then tranked the angry badger until it went down. This was an easy tame, and after giving it some prime, I got it knocked off the list. I named him Evil Badger, and day 89 ended in success. When day 90 began, it was time to get the next saddle tame, which was the Dinotherium. I grabbed my insane saddle for one, and finally to prepare, I needed to grab a bunch of beer, which is its required taming food. Luckily, I checked my barrel and it had been brewing the whole time, so there was a bunch. So I crafted up a bunch of jars so I could bottle it up. Once they were done, I grabbed all my beer and I was ready for this tame. I hadn't seen one of these guys before, so I didn't know where they spawned, but I went to the plains and started scouting. There were numerous creatures around, but none of them were the one I was looking for. Until finally, I scouted for long enough and spotted a herd of them. Elephants, elefante. There we are. Sorry. Level male 135. Let's go. Okay. This was literally perfect, and now I could get ready for this interesting passive tame. First, I started clearing the area, and I also needed to kill the females in his herd. This is because he needs to be alone to tame him, so he will interact with you. The way this tame works is you approach the elephant and you have to wait until it gives you 3 good signs before you let him drink beer from your inventory. If you approach during a bad sign or before 3 signs, he will trample you to death. After flying out of render and waiting for him to calm down, I went towards him. He started sniffing since he knew I had beer, and I waited for him to start performing body language. I saw an ear flap, which was really good, then a trunk swing, which was also good, then finally another ear flap. This meant I could approach him, so I ran under him. I then named this awesome guy Dumbo, and I had to quickly test out his attacks before going home. After my journey to finish up the day, I went on a massive metal run with my dino combo. I had to get a ton to prepare for the upcoming tames, so it was a big one. Once I finished, I loaded all the metal into the forge along with the wood from Peaches, and day 90 concluded. On day 91, it was time to cross the very last water tame off the list and get a Tuso. I already knew where one of these guys was, and I prepared by grabbing 100 black pearls from my base as well as my scuba. With that, I was ready, and I was hopeful that this tame would go smoothly. This is one of those tames where it's either done in a second or you mess up and lose everything. I flew to the blue obelisk, put the pearls on my hotbar, then deployed Lady Killer Croc into the depths. The way this tame works is I had to let the giant squid grab my Sarco and hold it in its tentacles. Then I had to jump off and quickly feed it before it killed my tame or decided to grab my player instead. If my player got grabbed, it would be guaranteed death, so I had to be very careful. It was extremely scary as the squid bolted towards me and it locked onto my Sarco. Okay, she's got my Sarco, so now we swim up and feed. Boom, baby, boom. Oh, we only needed 50 too. Yes, sir. There we go. I was very grateful that the tame went smoothly and I couldn't think of a good name, so I named her Grabby. With that, all the water tames were complete and I couldn't have been more stoked. After that, I threw up my new squid next to all my other water tames and I went to do some breeding to end the day. I bred my Rexes who were now off cooldown, and I also rebred my Dinosuches. Once they were done, I collected their eggs and set them next to Darren to hatch. I thought I got arced yet again when the Rex egg disappeared, but finally my two brain cells rubbed together and I figured it out. I got freaking arced again. You're actually kidding me, bro. It was literally too cold for 1 second. I left. What? Oh, I know what's happening. I'm being an idiot. I'm not getting arced. I know what's happening. Where are you, you little rat? Where are you? My Oviraptor is picking him up. I can't find him. You little stinker. This is where my first Rex egg went, dude. Oh my gosh, you're joking me. Unfertilized eggs. Stupid gobbler. With that, I now had 2 Rex egg chances and I set up some standing torches to hatch them. When the croc egg hatched, it unfortunately wasn't any better than Billy, so I took it out. To continue this bad luck, both the Rexes were trashed, so it looked like I wasn't going to get a perfect Rex or Dino before the end of the 100 days. This bad luck marked the end of day 91. Day 92 was a big day and it was time to tame the apex carnivore, the Giga. But before that, I needed to find Big Boy to get narcotics, and with the sheer amount of creatures in my base, I could not even see him. My base, look at my base. It is getting so cluttered with all the freaking tames that we have now. It's actually crazy. I can't even... There's Big Boy. After I managed to spot him, I needed to go on a massive berry run. This is because not only did I need a ton of trank arrows, but I needed a bunch of narcos to keep the Giga unconscious once it was down. But this was the last tame I would need narcotics for, so this motivated me to grind. After grabbing some spoiled meat, I was able to craft all the narcotics I needed. Next, I grabbed my bear traps and I repaired both my improved crossbows. With that done, I needed to make metal gates for the trap, so I recycled all my metal billboards. With these resources combined with the stuff in my smithy, I was able to make the 7 metal gateways I needed. Finally, I needed a ton of arrows, so I got the fiber, flint, and thatch that I needed to make close to 200 of them. Now I was ready to tame this monster, and I went to the plains biome because I had seen a Giga there all the way back when I was taming an Equus. Luckily, it was still in the same spot, and I set up my trap for the Giga. The design for this trap is a U-shape of gates with 2 bear traps in the middle. You then lead the beast in until it gets stuck and quickly place the 2 remaining gates at its heels to lock it in. I got its attention, and I clenched my cheeks as this giant carnivore chased me down. I barely messed up my first attempt to trap it, and it did a huge amount of damage to Cyclone. After refocusing, I got it lined up with the gates again, and I went for another attempt. I took the necessary bites I needed until I heard the clink of the bear trap. I then bolted around back and I got it fully sealed with the last 2 gates. After this, I was pumped and I could start the long tranking process. The Giga had a 1.5 times multiplier for torpor on its head, but I still had to pump this guy with close to 150 arrows. This took forever, but I finally brought the Colossal down. With that, I quickly killed a Diplo for prime meat and I fed it to the Giga while I made sure to keep it down by force feeding it narcos. After a long wait, I crossed this beast off the list and I decided to name her Barf since she was a very ugly color. I then made the flight back to base and threw out my new Giga to end day 92. My plan for days 93 through 94 were to knock the second to last tame of the challenge off the list. This tame was the Karcha, and I needed to prepare a lot of fertilized eggs for this. I bred up all my Theries, all my Spinos, and a bunch of my Griffins. The way this tame works is you first have to trap the Karcha, then you bring it dead tames to gain its trust. Once it trusts you, it will allow you to ride it, then you have to kill a bunch of creatures to fill its taming bar. This is where all the baby dinos would come in, and it would help me to gain its trust as well as tame it afterwards. Now that I had plenty of eggs loaded into Cyclone as well as a way to hatch them using Darren, I was pretty much ready for this tame. I also didn't need to build a trap since I could reuse the trap I used for the Giga. So I set out, and I had seen a Kartra while I was taming Gruff the Griffin, so I headed out to the same spot to find it. It stuck out like a sore thumb, and it was a level 95, which was perfect. I built the same U-shaped trap down the hill from it and set 2 bear traps inside. I aggroed the giant carnivore and led it towards my gates. It was a lot easier to lead than the Giga, and it immediately bolted into the bear trap. I then closed it in with the final 2 gates, and I was ready to start this tame. Next, I needed to prepare all my fertilized eggs, and I got them ready to hatch. I set my Theory eggs as well as my Griffin eggs down, and they started to incubate. But the Spino eggs weren't, and they were too cold, so I needed to make some standing torches. Once the Theory eggs as well as the Griffin eggs were on the verge of hatching, I made several torches in the forest. I then set them up, and my Spino eggs were now good to go, so I got them nearly fully incubated. With that, all my eggs were prepped so I could start the tame. I hatched up one of my Spino eggs, and I would feed this baby to the Kartra to gain its trust. I executed it with my shotgun and dragged it to the Kartra until it started sniffing it. It then gobbled up the baby, and I got 100% trust off the bat. I threw down every single egg I had so they would all hatch, and I freed the Kartra from the trap. It was now go time, and I jumped on its back to kill all the babies. After they were all dead, it was only 90% tame, so I was slightly panicked and I needed to kill something else quickly. I bolted down the hill, and luckily after 1 kill it was tamed. I was absolutely psyched, and I named this monster Joyride to end these days. When day 95 began, I only had 1 tame left to complete, but before I finished the taming challenge, I needed to get all the remaining artifacts. This is so I would be ready to challenge the boss on day 100. The only thing I needed to do to prepare was grab some grapples, then I was ready. There were 4 remaining artifacts, and I needed to grab 2 in the Dark Cave, then 1 in the South Wyvern Nest, and finally 1 in the depths of the ocean in the Tuso Trench. I set out to the Dark Cave first, and I landed in the same entrance as last time. I then bolted inside with Ignis, and I knew there would be nothing inside that would be strong enough to stop him. But the hard part about this cave is it's an absolute maze, and every tunnel looks the exact same. This makes it very difficult to navigate and not get lost by going in circles. But I made sure to be careful and not miss any pathways since I didn't want to run past an artifact. Finally, I saw glowing lights, and I saw my first one. First artifact in this cave. Artifact of the Immune. Awesome. With that, I continued my search through the expansive cave, and I definitely got lost a few times. But I managed to see a giant vertical hallway, and I knew the second artifact had to be up there. So I grappled my way up, and I was immediately rewarded. Ah, bingo, baby. Bingo. That is what that's what I'm talking about right there. Artifact of the Cunning, baby. Okay, that's both of the artifacts out of this cave. I then set off to the Wyvern Trench, and I grabbed my scuba gear while on my way. Once I made it there, my plan was to dive inside and outrun the numerous amount of dragons. This was exactly what I did, and I took a quick stamina break behind a wall. Once I was rested, I found a new opening on the cave floor. Once flying inside, I saw castle ruins, and I acquired the artifact of the strong. Now I only had 1 artifact left to go, and I had to make my last water adventure of the 100 days. I landed on the closest chunk of land near the trench, and I swam down into the depths. I was very wary, but I didn't see any Tusos, so I took my chance and grabbed the artifact of the Devourer. On my way out, I was very glad I did not dilly-dally. There wasn't even any Tusos down here to ruin my day. Oh, that's amazing. That was amazing. That's what I needed. I needed an easy artifact grab there. I think because I'm on single player, I just hadn't loaded this place in again, and oh, yeah, there were some Tusos down here. They were coming for me too. Oh my gosh. Okay. After making it back to base, day 95 ended, and I had all 10 artifacts so I could summon the boss at any time. When days 96 through 97 began, it was time to complete the taming challenge and tame a Titanosaur. I had an absolute ton of prep to do, and I first needed to craft the insanely expensive saddle since it was required to complete the tame. Luckily, I had went on a massive metal run on day 90, so this wasn't an issue, but I needed to get every other resource. I first started by getting a boatload of fiber for the saddle. With that first resource done, I needed to get a large amount of cementing paste. I needed 2k for the saddle, and I would need a ton after that that to craft cannonballs. I stopped at the first beaver pond and I grabbed one dam, then slaughtered them all. Now that they were all dead, I grabbed the rest of the dams and I went to the second spot. This bigger lake had even more beavers and I let them swarm towards me, then I massacred them like Anakin with the younglings. Oh, I feel bad. Poor beavers. Poor beavers. Their population's not going to recover after this. After they were all dead, I was free to steal all of their dams. I took all the cementing paste, and when all was said and done, I had plenty for all of my needs. With that, my next task was to get hide for the saddle. But before that, I made some extra storage boxes so I could store the huge amount of resources. I also wanted to get a bunch of spark powder crafting, so while I was out getting hide, I wouldn't be wasting time. I took out Annie one last time and I destroyed an absolute ton of rocks. With that done, I loaded all the flint and stone into the pestles and I got a huge amount of spark powder crafting. Now I was ready to get the 4,000 hide I needed, and my plan was to take Billy to the swamp to get this done. This would also level him up a ton in the process, which was essential since he would be my star player in the boss fight. I went absolutely ham in the swamp, killing everything in sight, and my giant croc made the swamp a breeze. I leveled him up to around 20k health, and then I pumped pure melee on him to make him a one-shotting menace. His gigabyte was absolutely lethal, and in no time I had slaughtered enough creatures that I had all the hide I needed. With that done, I loaded up everything into the smithy, and I crafted this ridiculously expensive saddle. The Titanosaur saddle, it's robbing me blind. That was an expensive craft, I'll tell you what. With that task complete, I needed to prepare all the rest of my taming supplies. First, I crafted a Quetzal platform saddle since I needed overgrown pigeon for this tame. With that done, I only needed to focus on crafting cannonballs, and I got as much gunpowder grinding as possible. Then I broke down all my metal gates since I didn't need them anymore, and the Titan saddle drained me of most of my metal. With that done, I crafted a ton of cannonballs and I had well over 30 of them. Now I was finally done preparing, and I transported all the cannonballs into overgrown pigeon's inventory, and I set up my cannon on her right shoulder. With that, I was ready to tame the final dinosaur of the challenge. Now the real difficult part began, and I had to figure out a way to line up consistent shots on this giant. Its head is always constantly moving, but I figured it out and I started landing headshots. I definitely had some bad misses, but I honestly did a lot better than I thought I would. After a couple of shots, I almost got pulverized into the floor. I think that's a miss. Oh, he almost got me. Ooh, I literally just pooped my pants hardcore. After almost getting stomped into oblivion, I landed shot after shot and chased this beast across the plains. This tame went long into the night, and I was losing my mind when I finally brought the beast down. Is that it? No way! No way! No way, we got it! Oh my gosh, that took forever, dude. Oh my gosh. With that, I equipped the saddle and I finished the taming challenge. I was beyond pumped to have tamed every single creature on Ragnarok, and I rightfully named this guy the biggest. This ended these group of days, and all that was left was challenging the boss. For days 98 through 99, I needed to fully prepare myself to defeat the boss. My goals were to train my strongest creatures, build saddles for all 20 of my dinos, and finally craft as much ammo for my guns as possible. I first started by picking out a bunch of my tames across my base that I definitely wanted to bring and leveling them up. I also started learning a bunch of saddle engrams, but before I could craft them, I needed a bunch of hide. I brought my Dinotherium, my Spino, and my Rex to train them up in the swamp. I took each of them on their own individual leveling spree, and I killed all sorts of tames in the swamp. When all was said and done, they all had super high stats, and I focused on mainly health, then all the remainder of their points went into melee. With that done, my star players were leveled up, and I could start crafting saddles for my tames with the hide I just got. I made a Theri one, a Megatherium one, as well as one for my Yudi and Bison. I then waited for this first wave of creatures to heal, and I transported them to the green obelisk. I then threw them all out one by one, and my first 10 creatures were honestly looking very strong. Now I had to get the second half of my tames, and I started crafting more saddles. I made a Facilis saddle, and I started crying up my second group of tames, which were significantly weaker than the first half. Big Hoss might have to come with us. Big Hoss is going to be a full glass cannon. Big Hoss is dying so fast. The Stego will come with us too, but we got to level her up and let her heal for a second. Oh yeah, Boomba's got to come with us too. So Boomba is going to come with us. Do we send him Big Boy? Nah, Big Boy needs to enjoy his retirement, and Big Boy would definitely die. Now I was picking at scraps and I was forced to bring in some very weak tames because of the no duplicate rule. I finished crafting up the last few saddles and crowded up all the remaining tames, including the most important one.
My best friend Happy Feet has got to join me in the boss fight. Happy Feet, you're coming with me, buddy. Here, let's give you a good luck kiss for me and you. All right, let's go, buddy.
With that, all my creatures were ready to go and I just needed to make the ammo, then grab the artifacts. I made as many shotgun shells as possible until I ran out of metal, and I brought all the bullets I had left in my other guns. Once they were all huddled around, my preparation days were over and it was time to challenge the boss. On day 100, all my creatures were awake and ready to go. It was time to finish out this amazing challenge and hopefully defeat Nunatak.
Happy Feet. We're petting Happy Feet for good luck. Yeah, buddy. That's great luck right there is what that is.
I then dumped all my artifacts in the terminal and I summoned the boss. My nerves reached an all-time high and I was transported into the snow wasteland. I hopped on my Dinosuchus and my plan was to ride Billy since his Gigabyte would be my strongest weapon against the boss. I whistled all my tames onto the ice lake and seeing Happy Feet charge into battle gave me the courage I needed to win. I let my tames handle the ice deathworms that were now spawning, and in the meantime I ripped into the boss. While it was flying, my tames wouldn't be able to do any damage to it, so it was my job to hurt it as much as possible with my guns. While I was doing this, she shot ice chunks into my tames, which made me super nervous. I didn't know how much they could tank and I was worried all my tames were going to die before she even landed. I started to lose hope for this fight when a couple of my dinos started dropping like flies.
Oh, there goes Clomper's already dead. That's not good. That means my guys are taking a lot of damage from that ice chunks.
I kept ripping into her with my shotgun, and when I saw her land, I knew it was our time. Happy Feet immediately died, and I was filled with rage at his loss, and I knew I needed to avenge him. I bit the dragon as much as possible, and I made sure to hit it with my Gigabyte whenever I could. As its health plummeted, I had real hope for this fight, and I was astonished my tames did so much damage. After it took off, I shot all the remainder of my bullets, and now I would have to wait for it to land. I had taken heavy casualties so far, and I didn't know how much longer my dinos could hold on. I took a huge loss when my UD Blackhawk died, and now my tames would have to do this without his courage buff. She landed for a second time and all my squad swarmed her. I repeatedly gigabit her and I watched even more of my tames die. But she was on the verge of death and I had real hope I could win.
Yes! We did it! I can't believe it! I think this is the first one that I've actually won besides Extinction. Let's go, boys! Oh my gosh, Ignis barely lived the fight. Let's go, boys!
I was over the moon after defeating her and it could not have been closer. All my tames were on their last leg and I knew the luck Happy Feet brought us was the only reason we won.
Alrighty, we did it, guys. We tamed every single creature on Ragnarok that's tameable, and we defeated the boss with no duplicate creatures. I can't believe we actually did it. Oh yeah. Okay, without further ado, if you guys enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.